Welcome back everyone. Today, we're continuing with the next part of this series, called What If Goku Remembered the Saiyans? My name is Ash. Please, for me, drop a like and subscribe to the page. Also leave your comments down below. With that, let's begin. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice boomed over the excited crowd. Get ready for the fight of the century. In one corner, we have the returning champion, a warrior who has been a part of this tournament since he was just a boy, a man undefeated, Kakarot. And in the other corner, a newcomer who has dominated every opponent so far, Chomper. Kakarot stretched his muscles, preparing for the intense battle ahead. He glanced across the ring at Chomper, who wore a predatory smile. Although Kakarot didn't know all the details, he was aware that Chomper was linked to Frieza, the tyrant who had annihilated the Sand people. Kami had warned him about the threat Chomper posed, but even Earth's guardian had his limits. Kakarot knew Chomper was here for him, but the reason remained a mystery. Chomper's grin widened as he addressed Kakarot. You know, you can still surrender. Kakarot smiled back. Why would I do that? It might save you from a beating, Chomper replied. Who's going to beat me? Kakarot asked, feigning ignorance. Don't be mistaken, Chomper said. You'll come with me, whether conscious or unconscious. It's your choice. Come with you where? Kakarot probed, hoping to gather information. Back to Lord Frieza, Chomper replied. And what does this Frieza want with me? Kakarot asked, his curiosity piqued. I don't know, and I don't care, Chomper said coldly. I just know he's paying a lot for any Saiyan brought to him alive. Since you're one of the few remaining Saiyans not yet captured, you're valuable. Sorry to disappoint you, Kakarot said, but you're leaving here empty-handed. We'll see about that, Chomper laughed. You may begin, the announcer declared. Chomper lunged at Kakarot, aiming a punch at his temple to end the fight swiftly. Kakarot blocked the blow, and the arena trembled as the two titans clashed. Chomper's grin faded when Kakarot's fist drove into his stomach. Without wasting a second, Kakarot followed up with a powerful roundhouse kick to Chomper's face, sending him skidding across the ring. Chomper wiped a trickle of blood from his mouth as he got to his feet. I underestimated you, he admitted. I thought you were weak and could be easily defeated. I won't make that mistake again. He charged at Kakarot again, this time with more caution, unleashing a flurry of kicks and punches. Kakarot managed to block the attacks, but was clearly on the defensive. After several minutes of intense combat, Kakarot's defenses faltered. Chomper's fist connected with Kakarot's cheek, snapping his head back. Seizing the opportunity, Chomper drove a knee into Kakarot's chest, launching him into the air. Chomper quickly followed, slamming his fists down on Kakarot's back and sending him crashing into the ring, leaving a massive crater. The crowd fell silent, eyes wide with shock, as they saw Kakarot buried beneath the rubble. The tension was palpable. I hope he's all right, Bulma said, wringing her hands nervously. She had just been reunited with her love and couldn't bear the thought of losing him again. Don't worry, Yamcha reassured her, trying to sound confident. He'll be fine. He's tougher than he looks, but if he doesn't make it, you could always fall back on Roshi as your rebound. Before he could even finish his sentence, Bulma turned and slapped Yamcha hard across the face. How can you even joke about that? She snapped. Just then, she noticed the old hermit, Master Roshi, ogling her as her chest heaved with anger. Not you too, you old pervert, she yelled, slapping him with all her might. Meanwhile, in the ring, Chomper stood triumphantly over the pile of rubble. I guess I overestimated you, he sneered, his smile wicked. The rubble began to tremble, and seconds later, Kakarot sprang out of the ground, dusting off his torn and tattered fighting uniform. Despite the bruises and cuts, he appeared unhurt. Not bad, Kakarot said, matching Chomper's smile. The last hit had stung, but he was exhilarated. It had been years since he faced someone stronger than him, and the sane blood coursing through his veins reveled in the thrill of battle. But what you have in strength, you lack in skill. Kakarot vanished, leaving only an afterimage. Chomper's fist passed through the illusion, and before he could react, Kakarot reappeared behind him, delivering a powerful roundhouse kick to the side of his head. Chomper hit the ground, but quickly sprang back up, charging at Kakarot with a flurry of punches and kicks. Kakarot blocked most of the blows, but a few landed, each strike pushing him to strategize. He needed to end this fight quickly. With a determined look, he shot into the sky. Let's see how well he fights in the air, Kakarot thought. Chomper followed, continuing his relentless assault. Kakarot dodged a punch aimed at his face, grinning as he noticed Chomper's attacks becoming sloppier. Flying and fighting at the same time were dividing his concentration. Kakarot saw an opening and phased out of sight again, leaving another afterimage. Chomper, not to be fooled a second time, turned to punch Kakarot in the stomach, but his fist met only another afterimage. Frustrated, the crocodilian fighter scanned the area for his opponent. He finally spotted Kakarot below in the ring, hands cupped at his side. "Kamehameha!" Kakarot shouted, unleashing a massive beam of energy directly at Chomper. Chomper had faced energy attacks before, but this one felt different. It seemed more concentrated, more powerful. That split second of hesitation cost him dearly. With no time to dodge, he crossed his arms over his chest and braced himself for impact. The energy beam hit him like a freight train, sending him spiraling uncontrollably into the sky. Kakarot exhaled in relief as he watched his Kamehameha wave connect. He had worried that Chomper might dodge it at the last second. Despite Chomper's lack of formal training, his raw strength and ferocity made him a formidable opponent. But Kakarot's relief was short-lived. Chomper, battered and burned, re-entered the ring, his body covered in cuts and bruises. The attack had hurt him, but it hadn't knocked him out of the fight. Taking advantage of Kakarot's momentary exhaustion, Chomper charged. Memories of being a target for more powerful warriors fueled his rage as he pummeled Kakarot with a relentless barrage of blows. Each punch and kick landed with devastating force, sending shockwaves through the arena. Chomper finished his onslaught with several energy blasts, each one exploding against Kakarot's body and causing him even more pain. Seizing the upper hand, Chomper drove his elbow into Kakarot's head, sending him crashing into the tile floor with bone-crushing force. Struggling, Kakarot rose to his feet, bloodied, bruised, and burnt, his clothes in tatters. He still looked determined. With a roar, he charged at Chomper, abandoning strategy for a full frontal assault. Kicks and punches flew, but Chomper blocked them with ease, countering with powerful blows of his own. As Kakarot's head cleared of anger, he realized he needed a new plan. Chomper was too strong to fight head-on. He had to come up with something before one of those crushing punches landed. Phasing out of sight, Kakarot used the afterimage technique once more, hoping to distract Chomper. But Chomper wasn't fooled. Anticipating Kakarot's move, he turned and landed a solid punch to Kakarot's head. Kakarot staggered, but managed to regain his senses quickly enough to dodge Chomper's follow-up kick, which passed through another afterimage. Chomper turned again, ready to strike at Kakarot's new position. Kakarot had been ready for Chomper's renewed vigilance. "Solar Flare!" he shouted, using Tien's technique to blind the reptilian warrior. Chomper swung wildly, unable to see, and Kakarot took advantage, launching a barrage of powerful kicks and punches, each hit landing harder than the last. Chomper's vision began to clear as Kakarot continued his assault. Regaining his sight, Chomper blocked one of Kakarot's punches and retaliated with a kick aimed at Kakarot's head. In an instant, Chomper had the upper hand again, pushing Kakarot back on the defensive. "You can't win," Chomper taunted as he pummeled Kakarot. "You monkeys are too weak to stand against Frieza's army. That's why you all died out," Kakarot growled, refusing to be defeated so easily. He considered using the moonball technique he had studied from his father's data, but he dismissed the idea almost immediately. Although he had gained some control over his Uzaru form, it wasn't enough to ensure he wouldn't hurt the spectators, especially with Bulma in the stands. He couldn't put her at risk just to win a fight. Besides, relying on a transformation in a one-on-one battle felt dishonorable. Chomper's fist connected with Kakarot's face, snapping him back to reality. Kakarot reeled, but quickly regained his footing. He could see that Chomper was starting to tire as well. Chomper launched another kick, but it passed through another afterimage. "Not this trick again," Chomper grumbled, turning to strike. But the attack was a feint, and Chomper's fist swung through yet another afterimage. Kakarot floated about 30 feet away, high in the air. "Solar Flare!" he yelled, blinding Chomper once more. Moving swiftly, he positioned himself below Chomper. "Hey, me! Hey, me! Hey!" he shouted, pouring far more power into the attack than before. This had to end the fight. He might not have much energy left otherwise. The massive energy beam shot toward Chomper, catching him completely off guard and blasting him high into the sky. Minutes later, Chomper fell back to Earth, unconscious, creating a massive crater that destroyed half the ring. The crowd was in awe. "It appears that Chomper is out," the announcer said. We will start the count. The 10 count passed without Chomper so much as twitching. Kakarot is the winner, the announcer declared. He is once again the champion of the world. He hurried over to Kakarot. Do you have anything to say to the crowd? Kakarot, panting from the exertion of his massive Kamehameha wave, simply grinned. He had done it. He had won. Ignoring the announcer, he walked over to where Chomper lay in the crater. Go ahead, Sen, Chomper said weakly. Kill me. You've won. Kakarot smiled faintly. I'm not like you and your master, he said. He turned to Bulma, who was now clinging to him despite his injuries. Do you still have the sensu beans I gave you to hold? Sure thing, sweetie, Bulma said, producing a sensu bean from her pocket. Kakarot popped the bean into his mouth and felt a rush of energy as his injuries healed instantly. He smiled and leaned down to kiss Bulma. Can you give me another one of those, dear? Bulma rolled her eyes, knowing Kakarot's endless appetite. Even the legendary sensu beans, which were supposed to keep a person full for a month, couldn't satisfy him. She handed him another bean, and Kakarot placed it in Chomper's mouth, allowing the bounty hunter to chew and be healed. Chomper rose to his feet, confused. Why'd you do that? He asked. I'm not going to kill you, Kakarot said. You don't deserve the death penalty for trying to beat me. Your mercy will be your undoing, Chomper warned. I doubt that, Kakarot replied. I beat you once, and I can do it again if I have to. Are you sure about that? Chomper challenged. Check your scouter if you don't believe me, Kakarot said confidently. Chomper walked over to his gear, grabbed his scouter, and affixed it to his eye. After pushing a few buttons, he grimaced. Kakarot's power level now read 2700. You see, Kakarot said, being a Saiyan, I grow stronger after every fight. You do not. If I beat you once, I can most definitely beat you again now. Chomper swallowed hard. This isn't over, Sen, he said as he flew off into the distance. What was that about? Bulma asked. He wanted to capture me and take me to Frieza, Kakarot replied. And you let him go? Bulma said, incredulous. Won't he come back with more help? No, I don't think so, Kakarot replied. Frieza apparently has a bounty on Sens. He wanted to collect it. Just giving the information to others means he has to share the reward. I don't think he's willing to do that. What if there's a reward for just information on a Sen's whereabouts? Bulma asked. He might decide to tell Frieza where you are. Kakarot hadn't considered that. He wondered if it had been right to let Chomper go. On one hand, it didn't feel right to kill a defeated opponent. But on the other hand, if his mercy led to putting the entire planet and Bulma in danger, he didn't know if he could forgive himself. Let's just hope that's not the case, he said. Now, he continued, smiling at Bulma, to the important business. I'm starving. Bulma slapped her forehead. No matter how much her boyfriend, now fiancé, had grown up over the years, some things never changed. In the weeks following the tournament, Kakarot and Bulma had gotten married, and he had moved into Capsule Corp with his new bride. While he didn't have as much space to train as he did in the wilderness, the Capsule Corp grounds provided adequate room for sparring. He had also grown to enjoy his life with Bulma. After all, what was the point of protecting the planet if he couldn't enjoy life sometimes? Seconds later, Kakarot's concentration was broken as he felt Bulma's emotions fluctuate inside the house. Since he and Bulma had bonded, he could sometimes sense her feelings. He wasn't sure if it was part of the energy sensing he had learned from Kami or something unique to their bond, but he knew she was worried about something. In an instant, his double vanished, and he rushed into the building to find out what was wrong. As he entered the room, he saw Bulma sitting at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. Quickly, he took her hands in his and gently lifted her chin to meet his eyes. What's wrong? He asked. I'm pregnant, Bulma replied, her voice trembling. Kakarot's face lit up. That's wonderful, he exclaimed. Bulma's expression brightened. She had been worried that Kakarot wouldn't be happy about her being pregnant so soon after their marriage. They hadn't planned on having a baby right away and hadn't even discussed it much. The past few weeks had been consumed with wedding planning. Kakarot had been surprisingly patient with the ceremonies, though he still tried to sneak away for training whenever he could. You're not upset? She asked. We haven't even talked about having children yet. I'm ecstatic, Kakarot said with a broad smile. Having a kid will be great. Years passed, and Kakarot continued his intense training. One day, he completed his 10,000th push-up, while his 4-year-old son, Bardock, played in the grass nearby. The boy had inherited Kakarot's features, but had his mother's blue hair, which stuck up in every direction just like his father's. It had been 5 years since the last tournament, and Kakarot hadn't seen or heard from Chomper since. Occasionally, he could sense Piccolo out in the desert training, but Piccolo's power wasn't a threat to him or his family. The demon had wisely avoided attempting to conquer the planet with Kakarot as its protector. Kakarot was pulled from his thoughts by his son. "Daddy, can we play fight?" Bardock asked eagerly. "Sure," Kakarot said, smiling. While he needed to train, he enjoyed sparring with his son. Bardock was quick and strong for a 5-year-old, much stronger than Kakarot had been at his age. In fact, Bardock had been born with a power level higher than Kakarot had at age 10. Bardock started throwing clumsy punches at his father. Kakarot blocked the blows with ease, letting the boy get some exercise. "I'll hit you yet," Bardock said determinedly, continuing to swing at his father. Kakarot laughed. "You've got a lot of work to do if you want to get that strong," he said matter-of-factly. "I will be stronger than you someday," Bardock declared, still swinging haphazardly. Before Kakarot could respond, he sensed a powerful energy approaching the planet. It wasn't as strong as his own, or as intense as Chomper's had been, but it was larger than any other power on Earth. "What is it, Daddy?" Bardock asked, noticing the change in his father's demeanor. "Someone's coming," Kakarot said, his tone serious. "Who?" Bardock asked, his curiosity piqued. "I don't know," Kakarot answered, "but I'm going to check it out. You should stay here with your mother." "But I want to go too," the boy whined. "It's too dangerous," Kakarot replied firmly. Raditz stretched his neck as he exited his space pod. It had been a long flight to this miserable planet, and his mood hadn't improved one bit. He had seen many cities that appeared untouched during his descent, making him wonder if his idiotic brother had failed in his task of cleansing this weak planet. He clicked his scouter, scanning for the nearest high power level. 700, he muttered to himself, lifting off the ground and heading toward the source. That must be Kakarot. There can't be anyone else that strong here. Minutes later, he landed in a bustling city and clicked his scouter again to hone in on the power level. He was surprised to see a small bald man instead of his brother. The man seemed to ignore him at first, but eventually turned to face him. "Who are you?" the bald man asked with suspicion. "Someone you don't want to tangle with," Raditz replied. "Where is Kakarot?" he demanded, hoping this midget knew his brother's whereabouts. "What do you want with Kakarot?" Krillin asked, wincing slightly. He sensed this could go badly. The man's armor indicated he was a warrior, and that could mean trouble. But Krillin wasn't about to betray his friend. "That's none of your concern, little man," Raditz said coldly. "Now tell me where Kakarot is." "No," Krillin replied, his voice firm. Raditz's eyes narrowed. He didn't want to hear that. In a flash, he shot at Krillin, smashing his fist into the man's face. Krillin flew back, crashing into a building and causing nearby spectators to scatter. Krillin picked himself up and wiped a trickle of blood from his face. This guy was strong. That blow had hurt. A lot. Wincing, he took his fighting stance, knowing he was in over his head. Krillin charged at Raditz, throwing a flurry of kicks and punches, but Raditz was too quick. The taller warrior struck Krillin with a powerful punch, sending him to the ground again. Krillin's body ached as he pushed himself up once more. "I won't let you hurt anyone," he declared, cupping his hands at his side. "Ka! Me ha! Me ha!" he shouted, releasing a beam of blue energy. Raditz crossed his arms over his chest as the beam struck with destructive force. He had to admit the beam was impressive, especially for such a weakling, but it wasn't enough to bring him down. When the smoke cleared, Raditz stood with a few cuts and bruises, but relatively unharmed. "That was pretty good," he laughed, "but I'm done playing with you." Raditz shot forward faster than Krillin could follow and buried his fist in Krillin's stomach, the force so great it came out the other side. Krillin fell off Raditz's arm, dead, before he hit the ground. "Now to find Kakarot," Raditz said, turning to fly off. "I'm right here," Kakarot said, landing behind Raditz. Raditz turned, a smirk forming on his face. "So you finally show up, brother," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. Kakarot's eyes narrowed as he looked at Krillin's lifeless body. "Why did you kill him?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. "He got in my way," Raditz replied dismissively. "Now, are you going to come quietly, or do I have to drag you to Lord Frieza myself?" Kakarot clenched his fist. "I'm not going anywhere with you," he said firmly. "And if you think you can force me, you're in for a surprise." Raditz laughed. "We'll see about that, little brother. We'll see." Raditz spun around, astonished that someone could sneak up on him without his scouter picking it up. He tapped the device. 50, he muttered, reading the number. "How are you so pathetically weak? You're a Saiyan, and you're even weaker than the one I just eliminated. Why did you kill him?" Kakarot asked, ignoring the rant about his power level. "He was weak," Raditz said bluntly. "I'm here to finish what you were supposed to do." I'm here to clear this planet of all life and get it ready for selling. I was going to bring you back to help, but you're too weak to even be worth my time." Kakarot smiled confidently. "If I'm so weak, put me in my place." Raditz charged at Kakarot, throwing a fist at his face, but Kakarot moved his head just enough to dodge the blow. Raditz shot his other fist at his younger brother, but Kakarot deftly moved out of the way again before the punch could land. "Are you done?" Kakarot asked calmly. Raditz wasn't done. He attacked with wild fury, sending blows at his brother with lightning speed. Kakarot moved even faster, dodging the attacks effortlessly. Finally, Kakarot struck back, his fist connecting with Raditz's stomach and doubling the Saiyan warrior over in pain. "So, who's weak now?" Kakarot gloated. Raditz grunted, still clutching his stomach. "How?" he stuttered. "Which part?" Kakarot asked. "Suppressing my power or beating you?" Raditz, speechless, hit the button on his scouter again. 300, he stammered. That at least explained why he had been so easily beaten. "Now," Kakarot said, "what are you doing here?" "I came to get you," Raditz replied. "We have a big job coming up and we need another Saiyan to help." "Who's we?" Kakarot asked. "Vegeta, Nappa, and myself," Raditz replied. "Sadly, we are the only Saiyans left." Kakarot stiffened at this. He looked down and saw the tail wrapped around Raditz's waist. He was indeed another Saiyan. "How are you still around?" Kakarot asked. "I was led to believe I was the last Saiyan alive." "Is that why you didn't accomplish your mission?" Raditz asked. "I've done a good job of my mission," Kakarot replied. "I've kept this planet safe from threats, and I've gotten much stronger." "That wasn't your mission, you idiot," Raditz retorted. "Your mission was to wipe out all life on this pathetic planet." "No, it wasn't," Kakarot insisted. "Did you hit your head or something?" Raditz asked incredulously. "How could a brother of mine be such an idiot as to forget his mission?" "Wait," Kakarot said. "Did you say brother?" "Yes," Raditz replied. "You are my younger brother. You were sent here as a child to destroy the inhabitants of this planet." "No," Kakarot said. "Father sent me here to train, to be able to defeat Frieza someday, for enslaving our people. He said that Frieza was on the verge of destroying our people, and that no one was likely to survive." "So, you say Father told you not to destroy this planet?" Raditz asked skeptically. "Yes," Kakarot replied. "Do you have proof of this?" "Yeah," Kakarot said. "I have the message he gave me and all that back at home along with the ship I came in." "This changes everything," Raditz said, his voice heavy with realization. "Are you sure it was Frieza that destroyed our people? After all, he took us in after the meteor hit our world." "That's what Father believed at least," Kakarot replied, a hint of sorrow in his eyes. "We need to call Vegeta and Nappa and tell them then," Raditz insisted. "All right," Kakarot agreed, "but don't say much over the communications. Frieza may be listening. He's already sent one goon after me." "Really?" Raditz said, surprised. "Records of your mission are buried in the archives. I had to search long and hard to find them." "Chomper must have done the same then," Kakarot guessed. "He said there was a reward for bringing in any Saiyans." "Curious," Raditz mused. "Well, I guess Frieza wouldn't tell other Saiyans about this reward. Let's go back to Capsule Corp, and we'll get a message out to this Vegeta and Nappa to come here and discuss what to do about Frieza. He won't be happy to deter his course from the job we've got lined up," Raditz warned. "We'll tell him we have new information about the destruction of planet Vegeta," Kakarot said confidently. "That should get his attention." "True," Raditz conceded, then added with a hint of regret. "Sorry about your friend, by the way." "It's okay," Kakarot said, a small smile playing on his lips. "We'll just wish him back with the Dragon Balls." "Dragon Balls?" Raditz asked, intrigued. "They allow you to make anyone wish," Kakarot explained. "We could use them to wish for immortality," Raditz suggested, his eyes gleaming with ambition. "Then we could rule the galaxy ourselves." "I don't think that's a good idea," Kakarot said firmly. "It just doesn't seem right to replace one tyrant with another." "You may be right, brother," Raditz conceded, "but you'll have a hard time convincing Vegeta of that." "If it comes to it, I'll stop him myself," Kakarot declared, determination in his voice. "You have no idea how strong he is," Raditz cautioned. "He's easily 4 times as strong as you or more. Then we'll train to make sure we have some more leverage in the conversation," Kakarot said, his resolve unwavering. "Now, let's gather the Dragon Balls so we can wish Krillin back." "Wait," a voice echoed in Kakarot's head. "I've talked to King Kai on Krillin's behalf, and he has been allowed to train in Otherworld. So, I want you to wait a year before wishing him back." "All right, Kami." Kakarot thought back to the Guardian. "We'll wait a year." He turned to Raditz. "Let's go back to Capsule Corp," he said. "We'll get the strongest fighters on the planet together and send a message to Vegeta and Nappa. Then, We'll make a plan. Several hours later, after gathering all the Z-Fighters at Capsule Corp and filling them in on the situation, Kakarot and Raditz sent a message to Vegeta and Nappa. They should be here in a year, Raditz said. Even with all the warriors here, and I'll admit, there are a lot of them, we wouldn't stand much of a chance against Vegeta and Nappa, let alone Frieza. Well, there is one more warrior I'm going to try and recruit to our cause, Kakarot said. He's one of the strongest on this planet anyway, but he doesn't play well with others. Who's that? Raditz asked. Piccolo, Kakarot replied. Meanwhile, Chomper looked up from his monitor and grinned. He had been monitoring any communications from Earth for the last 5 years, keeping tabs on the Saiyan down there. It had been quiet the whole time until today. He read the message one more time. Vegeta, something very important has come up. I need you and Nappa to meet me on Earth as soon as possible. I can't say too much more, because we don't know who may be listening, but trust me, it is vital that you come immediately. Raditz. Chomper pondered the message. This wasn't good. Apparently, another Sen had landed on Earth. Raditz wasn't too much of a threat, but he still didn't know how strong Kakarot had become in the last 5 years. And now, Vegeta and Nappa were on their way to Earth as well. This was definitely news that Frieza would want to know about. He'd love to go down there and bring in the Sand conspirators along with the message, but he knew after his battle with Kakarot, he would be hard-pressed to win a confrontation with only Kakarot. It would be nearly impossible if it were 2 against 1. And Frieza would want all the conspirators, not just the 2. He had to get help on this one. This better be worth it, or you will be blown to oblivion. Vegeta. Kakarot read the message that had come to Raditz in response to the one he had sent to Vegeta. He doesn't sound too happy, he commented. That's Vegeta, Raditz said. I hope you're convincing when he gets here, because Vegeta may well kill everyone on this planet of yours, including us, if he feels you wasted his time. We'll just have to be strong enough to prevent that if it happens, Kakarot said. I don't think you realize how strong Vegeta is, Raditz said. He could destroy you without even a thought. That's why we're training, Kakarot said, determination in his voice. Yamcha tied his sash around his fighting uniform and headed out the door. Where are you going, honey? A voice asked from the bedroom. Minutes later, Chi-Chi came through the doorway with a blanket wrapped around her. I have to go train, babe, Yamcha replied. Something big is up. What's going on? Chi-Chi asked, concern in her voice. It's a long story, Yamcha said, but there's some company coming in a year, and they are really strong. We need to be strong enough to make them respect us, and I need to be strong enough to beat that Raditz for what he did to Krillin, he thought to himself. Can I come along? Chi-Chi asked. I don't know, baby, Yamcha replied. It might be dangerous. I'm not a little flower, Chi-Chi retorted. You should know that. Yamcha grinned. His girlfriend was right. She was definitely the strongest girl he knew, but she wasn't at the level of him and his friends, and even they weren't at the level of Kakarot and this new guy, Raditz. Great, let's go, Chi-Chi said before he could respond again. Let's get to training, Raditz said, putting on his armor. Kakarot walked out of the bedroom in his usual fighting uniform. I'll be ready in a few minutes, he said, slipping on a wristband. A few seconds later, Bulma followed him out of the room, dressed in one of Kakarot's t-shirts with her legs sticking out the bottom. Oh, I didn't know Raditz was up yet, she said, noticing the other Sen. She had been surprised when her husband had come back with his brother in tow, but the older Sen had been surprisingly polite to her. She turned back to Kakarot. Are you taking Bardock with you? She asked. Bardock? Raditz asked, confused. Our son, Bulma answered. As if on cue, Bardock ran in and tackled his father, leaping up into his arms. Can I come with you, Daddy? He asked. Kakarot grinned. Sure, he said, but you have to be good. We're going to be doing some hard training. He turned to look at his brother and then back to his son. Bardock, I'd like you to meet your Uncle Raditz. Bardock leapt from his father's arms into his uncle's arms. After all, if his father trusted him and called him his uncle, he must be okay. Raditz squirmed, unused to having a child react like that to him. He was used to people running from him in terror, not hugging him. Krillin looked at the long path before him. Kami had told him that at the end of the winding snake was King Kai's place. He had also said that he could feel that there would be a threat coming to Earth soon, and that he had arranged to have him train with King Kai for a year before he would be wished back with the Dragon Balls. The monk shrugged. Well, no time like the present, he thought, as he took off running down the path. Kakarot and Raditz landed with Bardock in a deserted area. Waiting for them were Tien, Yamcha, and Chi-Chi. Good to see you guys, Kakarot said to his two friends. "Where's Keiotsu?" he asked. "He's decided that he couldn't keep up with us," Tien said flatly. "That's too bad," Yamcha said. "Let's get started," Kakarot said, pulling out a capsule from his pocket. He pressed it, and it opened to reveal a massive trunk. "What's that?" Raditz asked. "Training equipment," Kakarot said, pulling out a fighting uniform similar to his. "The weights will help get you stronger faster." "Weights?" Raditz asked. "You're wearing weighted clothing?" "Yeah," Kakarot said. "I wear it most of the time." A few minutes later, all of the fighters were adorned in their custom fighting uniforms. "Daddy," Bardock asked, "do I get one too?" Kakarot smiled warmly as he handed his son a fighting uniform identical to his own, only smaller. "You sure do," he said with pride. He turned to the others, his eyes sparkling with determination. "Now we are ready to begin. Today's training will consist of sparring, so we can see where everyone is at. Tien, you will fight Yamcha, and I will fight Raditz." "Who will I fight?" Bardock asked eagerly. Kakarot glanced down at his son. He hadn't really planned on having Bardock spar just yet, as he wasn't nearly strong enough to hold his own against any of the other fighters. Then he noticed that Yamcha had brought Chi-Chi along. They seemed to be fairly close in power, he thought. "Son, you and Chi-Chi will be sparring." "What?" Chi-Chi exclaimed in shock. "I'm sparring against a child?" "Yes," Kakarot said firmly, "but I've been training him myself, so don't underestimate him." Minutes later, the fighters had paired off and were sparring. Most of them were moving clumsily, adjusting to the weights they were wearing. Kakarot leaned his head to one side as Raditz threw a punch at his face. Dodging the blow from his brother was child's play, though he was surprised at how well Raditz had adapted to the weights. They really weren't slowing him down much. "You take to weighted clothing fairly fast," Kakarot remarked as he dodged another punch. "I'm used to planets with higher gravity than this," Raditz replied honestly. "Our homeworld has nearly 10 times the gravity of this one, and I grew up there," he continued. "The weights take some getting used to, but in this low gravity, they aren't too difficult to handle." "That's bound to make training more effective," Kakarot said, dodging yet another attack from Raditz. "It does," Raditz agreed, throwing another punch at his brother. "Most beings from higher gravity planets are stronger than those from low gravity planets like this one. It's one of the considerations when we send out warriors to take over a planet." Meanwhile, Bardock threw a punch at Chi-Chi, but the woman barely dodged the blow. She was having some trouble adjusting to the weights, but not as much as Bardock was. After throwing the punch, the extra weight of the wristbands was too much for the child, and he lost his balance, falling to the ground. The boy quickly recovered, however, and was soon charging at Chi-Chi again. She had to admit the boy was quick and strong. She couldn't dodge all his attacks, and the ones she had to block had some force behind them. She started to counterattack with kicks and punches of her own, probing the boy's defenses, still a little afraid of hurting the child. Bardock blocked the blows with more skill than she had expected, so she continued to press the attack, grinning. She had almost forgotten how much fun it was to spar against an opponent who could give her a workout. Piccolo watched the scene from a distance, his eyes narrowing as he observed the 6 fighters spar. He knew he was still no match for Kakarot. Over the past 5 years, Kakarot had grown immensely stronger, and despite Piccolo's rigorous training, the gap between their powers remained vast. Now, there was another fighter with Kakarot. Curiosity gnawed at him. He needed to find out what was going on. Kakarot dodged another kick from Raditz before launching a light punch of his own, which Raditz managed to block. The impact caused the older Saiyan to stagger back, but he quickly recovered, sending a roundhouse kick at his brother's head. Kakarot raised an arm, lazily blocking the blow, and countered with a punch to Raditz's face. The blow broke through Raditz's defenses, connecting with his cheek and sending him flying into a rock outcropping. Raditz shot to his feet, ready to continue the spar, but stopped when he noticed Kakarot turning his head away. "What is it?" he asked. "Piccolo is here," Kakarot said, his eyes scanning the distance. "Come on out, Piccolo," he yelled. "I want to talk." Seconds later, Piccolo floated down to where Kakarot and the others had been sparring. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone sharp and suspicious. "I want you to join us," Kakarot said, straightforwardly. "And why would I do that?" Piccolo asked, his eyes narrowing further. "Well," Kakarot began, "we're going to face off against Frieza. We could use your help." "I don't care about this Frieza," Piccolo said dismissively. "I'm going to finish you off and rule this world. He's the one Chomper was working for. Kakarot explained. I figured you'd like the opportunity to get a rematch with him. Piccolo's expression shifted slightly, considering the offer. Fine, count me in, he said finally. Great, Kakarot said, a smile spreading across his face. I have a set of weighted clothing for you. No need, Piccolo replied, pointing to his cape and turban. You're not the only one who has learned that trick. All right, Kakarot said, his voice turning serious. I want both of you to attack me, Raditz scoffed. Saiyans fight alone, he said defiantly. Not when they are much weaker than their opponent, Kakarot reminded his brother. Besides, I need a good workout, and you weren't giving me one on your own. Fine, Raditz grumbled, charging at his brother and throwing a punch at his face. Kakarot dodged the blow and moved to take the offensive, but before he could throw a punch, Piccolo attacked him from the side with a flurry of kicks and punches. Kakarot raised his arms, deflecting the blows, but before he could counterattack, Raditz charged at him with renewed vigor. Kakarot ducked below Raditz's punch and shot a fist at Piccolo's stomach, but the Green Warrior moved out of the way just in time. Piccolo countered with a punch, but Kakarot managed to block it. Unfortunately, this left him open to Raditz's attack, and his brother's fist connected with the side of his face, sending him stumbling back. Kakarot quickly recovered and sent a punch at his brother, connecting with his stomach and causing Raditz to double over, blood spurting from his mouth. Piccolo seized the opportunity, gathering a beam of energy in his hands and shooting it at Kakarot. The beam hit Kakarot's face just as he turned to deflect it. Piccolo charged forward, delivering a relentless series of attacks to Kakarot's open guard. Kakarot turned to block Piccolo's blows, but was immediately assaulted by Raditz. A left hook from his brother sent Kakarot flying back. Flipping in midair, Kakarot charged back at his two opponents. He focused on Raditz first, pummeling his brother with a barrage of kicks and punches, mercilessly pounding him until Raditz fell to the ground, unconscious. Kakarot then raised an arm to block Piccolo's punch and turned to attack him with the same intensity. Without the distraction of another opponent, Piccolo only lasted a few seconds before he too lay on the ground, unconscious. Later that night, Kakarot lay in bed with Bulma. How'd the training go? She asked, her eyes filled with curiosity. It was all right, Kakarot said, stretching his sore muscles. I noticed Raditz was a bit beat up, Bulma said with a laugh. I thought you were going to go easy on him. I did, Kakarot replied with a smirk. I had to let him get a workout before I knocked him out. Bulma's expression turned serious. Just be careful, she said softly. I do worry about you. I wish there was something I could do to help keep you safe. There are a few things you can do, Kakarot said thoughtfully. Is there any way you can copy the Saiyan armor that Raditz and I have? It would be handy for the others to have some protection when the fighting starts. Sure, Bulma said, her eyes lighting up with determination. Anything else? Yes, Kakarot said, his voice steady. Is there any way you can make a room that multiplies the planet's gravity? Bulma considered the idea, her mind already racing with possibilities. I don't know, she said slowly. The theory is definitely possible. I should be able to come up with something. Thanks, love, Kakarot said with a warm smile. That would be a great help. Meanwhile, Krillin looked around in puzzlement as he reached the end of Snake Way. Where's this King Kai? He wondered aloud. Soon, his gaze moved up into the sky where he saw a small planet floating in the distance. Figuring that had to be the place, he leapt off of Snake Way and toward the planet. As he got halfway there, the planet's gravity took over and pulled him in. Krillin landed hard in the grass near a big tree. Man, that hurt, he said, getting up sluggishly. He soon noticed it was harder to move than he expected. It feels like I weigh a ton, he mused. That's because the gravity is 10 times that of Earth, a voice said from behind him. Krillin turned to see a blue alien, about his height but much plumper, sporting black sunglasses and antennae sprouting from his head. You must be King Kai, Krillin said, his voice filled with awe. I am, the god replied with a nod. So what brings you to my planet? Well, I figured you already knew, Krillin replied, scratching his head. You got me, King Kai said with a chuckle. I do know why you're here. In fact, I sense that I know more about it than you do. Kami contacted me and told me there would soon be a war with a tyrant named Frieza, and he needed me to make you as strong as possible so you can help in the fight. All I know is that an alien came down and killed me, Krillin said. I figured I'd be training to beat him. No, King Kai said, shaking his head. The one they call Kakarot easily beat him and convinced him to join forces against the one called Frieza. They joined forces? Krillin said in disbelief. Yes, King Kai said. It turns out that this Raditz is Kakarot's brother. I've been watching the events down on Earth with great interest. I'm so glad my death has entertained you, Krillin said, sarcasm dripping from his voice. King Kai burst out laughing. You are a funny man. You have passed the test. I will train you. Test? Krillin asked, bewildered. What test? I don't train anyone without a sense of humor, the blue alien said. You made me laugh, so I will train you. Great, Krillin said with a sigh of relief. Let's get started. All right, your first test is to catch Bubbles, King Kai said with a mischievous grin. Who's Bubbles? Krillin asked, confused. Bubbles is my pet monkey, King Kai said. Now, you may think that catching him is easy, but in this gravity, it will be more difficult than you think. Also, you will wear these. King Kai pulled out an undershirt, wristbands, and boots. They are weighted to make your training harder. Krillin picked up the undershirt, his eyes widening. It must weigh a ton, he said, feeling the heft of the clothing. Back on Earth, Kakarot dodged to the left as Raditz threw a punch at his head. The younger Saiyan backflipped and brought a boot up, kicking Raditz in the face. The long-haired Saiyan flew back and landed against the wall of the gravity room, the impact echoing through the chamber. Kakarot didn't let up for a second and charged at his brother, delivering a flurry of kicks and punches to his abdomen. For the last month, the two brothers had been training at 5 times Earth's gravity in the gravity room that Bulma had made. Sometimes, Piccolo joined them, and sometimes it was just the two of them training. Across the room, Bardock struggled to do push-ups in the increased gravity. While he wasn't strong enough to actually spar in the increased gravity, the boy had insisted on trying to train with his father and uncle. Raditz recovered from Kakarot's attack and charged back at his brother, throwing a barrage of punches at the younger Saiyan's head. Kakarot raised his hands to block the blows, staying just seconds ahead of his brother's attacks. He was still able to best his older brother fairly easily, but he could tell that Raditz was quickly closing the gap between them. Before Kakarot could react, Raditz backflipped away and charged an energy attack in his hands. Double Sunday! Raditz shouted, pouring all his energy into the attack. Kakarot crossed his arms over his chest and braced himself as the attack hit. The room shook with the explosion, but when the smoke cleared, Kakarot stood unharmed. You're getting better, he said, but you need to learn to focus your energy better. Kakarot charged at Raditz again, and the two were soon fighting as fiercely as ever. Lord Frieza, Kui said, bursting into his master's chambers. I have a priority message from one of our informants. This better be important, Frieza said, turning his cold gaze towards Kui. Oh, it is, Kui assured, bowing slightly. One of my informants just obtained some information that he thought you needed to know about. What information? Frieza asked, irritation clear in his voice. Apparently, there is another Saiyan in the universe who survived the destruction of planet Vegeta, Kui said. That isn't vital information, Frieza said dismissively. Inform the bounty hunters to go after him and bring him to me. You're wasting my time. Sire, Kui continued, undeterred. One of our bounty hunters already had an encounter with this Saiyan and was defeated. He has been observing him for the past 5 years to see if he posed a big enough threat to bring in outside forces. 5 years? Frieza asked. His interest peaked. He's been observing him for 5 years and only now tells me about it. Up until now, Kui explained, the Saiyan was staying put and didn't seem like much of a threat. What has changed? Frieza inquired. He was found by Raditz, Kui said. Raditz then sent a message to Vegeta, and they are all meeting up. I think they are up to something, sire. You may very well be correct, Frieza said, a hint of menace in his voice. I want them brought to me. Tell this bounty hunter to bring them in. Sire, Kui said hesitantly, he was not powerful enough to beat the one Saiyan. He will be no match for Vegeta. What do you suggest then? Frieza asked, already sensing where this was going. I should lead an expedition to bring them in, Kui suggested. I could bring Apollo and Napple and capture the Saiyans. Or better yet, I could eliminate them. Yes, Frieza said, his eyes narrowing. The Saiyans have outlived their usefulness, but I'm not sure you are up to the task of eliminating Vegeta. You, Apollo, and Napple will go meet up with this bounty hunter, but Dodoria and Zarbon will accompany you to make sure the task is completed. Yes, my master, Kui said, bowing to his lord. And one more thing, Frieza added, his voice icy. Make sure there isn't a full moon on the day you try to take in the Saiyans. 7 months later, Kakarot stretched as he got ready for another day of training. He and Raditz had been using the gravity room nearly every day for the last 8 months. Today, they were taking a break from the gravity training to spar out in the open, so they could go all out. Beside him, Bardock came out from the house, still tying his sash around his fighting uniform. He wore a uniform identical to his father's, complete with weighted clothing. On his back, he sported a sword. The sword had been Bulma's idea. She had claimed that training the boy to use the weapon would give him an edge should any wild animals attack, while they trained occasionally in the wilderness. Kakarot had agreed and had the scientist make a weighted one for training. The boy had swung the weapon tirelessly in the gravity room, while the two brothers had sparred against each other. "Are you ready yet?" Kakarot asked his son. "Yes," the boy replied eagerly. "Can I fight someone today? We'll let you see how well your training has gone," Kakarot said with a smile. "Yamcha, Tien, Chi-Chi, and Piccolo are all coming to train with us today." After a quick flight, the two Saiyans arrived at a clearing to see Raditz already waiting for them. The older son was in a meditative pose, his eyes closed. "You're late," he said as the two landed. "I see you've been practicing clearing your mind," Kakarot said. "I have," Raditz responded. "You were right. I need to learn to control my energy better. Brute strength alone won't be enough." Kakarot grinned to himself, remembering how stubborn Raditz had been the first time he had tried to get him to meditate. He had insisted that a Saiyan needed to fight to train. It had taken Kakarot owning him in a particularly fierce spar to convince the older brute that focus could sharpen fighting instincts and make him a better warrior. After the first few times he had meditated, he had noticed results quickly and kept at the additional training. Before the two brothers could talk much more, Tien, Yamcha, and Chi-Chi landed nearby. "I see you taught the woman to fly," Raditz commented. "I did," Yamcha said. He sighed, remembering how he had spent hours trying to teach his girlfriend to clear her mind, enough to focus her energy. "That's so cool," Bardock said. "Daddy taught me to fly too." "How long did that take?" Yamcha asked. "I can only imagine how hard it would be to teach a 4-year-old to fly." "I'm almost 5, Bardock said in a hurt tone. "It only took a few hours," Kakarot said. "The boy learns fast." "A few hours," Yamcha said in disbelief. "It took Chi-Chi weeks." "Let's get this training started," Piccolo said, landing with a thud. "Your irrational small talk is a useless waste of time." "All right," Kakarot said, nodding. "Bardock, Tien, Yamcha, and Chi-Chi will all work together to fight Piccolo, while Raditz and I spar. I'm just going to watch," Chi-Chi said. "I can't keep up with how strong everyone is getting." "Very well then," Kakarot agreed. "Yamcha, Tien, and Bardock will take on Piccolo." "I'm expected to fight a child?" Piccolo said in disbelief. He wanted to fight Kakarot and prove that he was the strongest, but after sensing the power of both Saiyans, he realized they were out of his league and leaving him further behind by the day. "That child isn't as weak as you think," Kakarot said with a smile. A few minutes later, Tien, Yamcha, and Bardock charged at Piccolo all at once. The Green Warrior dodged fists and feet right and left, staying ahead of all the attacks. Yamcha sent a left hook at the demon's face. Piccolo dodged the blow only to be hit by a knee from Tien. He flew back from the force of the blow. Before he could recover, Bardock was on him, driving a fist into his gut. The blow didn't do a lot of damage, but Piccolo was surprised by the kid's strength. Bardock had potential, that was for sure. Piccolo brought his mind back into the fight, just in time to see Tien coming in for another attack. Deciding to switch tactics, Piccolo went on the offensive. He dodged to the left and drove a fist into the Triclops' stomach. Tien doubled over and fell to the ground, temporarily out of the fight. Piccolo turned his attention to Yamcha and charged at the human warrior. Yamcha blocked a punch from Piccolo that sent him sliding back along the ground. From the force of the blow alone, he braced himself for another attack, but it never came. He looked up to see Piccolo dodging attacks from Bardock, who had a sword in his hand and was swinging it wildly at the Green Warrior. Yamcha used Piccolo's distraction to charge up an attack of his own. He cupped his hands at his side and gathered his energy. Me, he, he shouted, sending a beam of blue energy into Piccolo's back. The beam hit Piccolo full force and sent him flying high into the sky. A short distance away, Kakarot and Raditz were in the midst of an intense spar of their own. Raditz shot at his younger brother with a ball of energy in his hands. As soon as he reached Kakarot, he threw the attack at point-blank range. Kakarot reacted instantly, swatting the energy aside and bringing a fist in to strike his brother's face, sending the older Saiyan flying back into a cliff, smashing the rocks around him. Raditz picked himself up from the rubble and wiped a trickle of blood from his mouth. He spread his arms wide and gathered energy in both hands, concentrating hard to push more of his energy into the attack. "Double Sunday!" he shouted, bringing his arms together. The beams of energy merged into one attack and shot at Kakarot. Kakarot saw the beams coming and cupped his hands at his side. "Kamehameha!" he shouted, quickly gathering his energy and shooting it at his brother's attack. The Kamehameha wave pushed the Double Sunday aside effortlessly, and the two beams hit Raditz with earth-shattering force. Kakarot landed beside the crater his energy attack had created and picked his brother up off the ground. "Not bad," he said, smiling. "Your energy attacks are getting better." "I still can't focus that much energy that quickly," Raditz said, shaking his head. "Your attack came almost instantly and overpowered mine so easily." "That comes with practice," Kakarot said, clapping his brother on the shoulder. "Your meditation has helped though." Meanwhile, Piccolo picked himself up from the ground. That last attack had hurt. He was angry at himself for letting himself get distracted by the boy. He hadn't even seen the blast coming. His thoughts were interrupted as Bardock charged at him, swinging his sword. Piccolo moved to counter, but was interrupted as Tien floated above him and pointed a finger at the Green Warrior. "Dodon Ray!" Tien shouted, sending a beam of yellow energy at Piccolo. The Green Warrior dodged the attack, but just barely. Before he could react, he once again had a sword coming at his head. Dodging that attack, he was struck by one of Tien's Dodon Rays. The beam of yellow energy burned through Piccolo's right shoulder, making the use of that arm impossible. Seconds later, Yamcha entered the fray and started throwing kicks and punches of his own at the demon. Piccolo couldn't keep up with all the attacks and was pummeled mercilessly. Minutes later, he lay on the ground, leaking purple blood from numerous wounds as his three adversaries stood above him. "You give in yet?" Yamcha said, panting slightly. Piccolo only groaned in response. He couldn't get up to fight anymore. Kakarot, Raditz, and Bardock stood in the open desert, a breeze gently blowing across the sandy landscape as they waited. The sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows behind them. "Are you sure Vegeta's going to show up today?" Kakarot asked, glancing over at his brother. "That's what his message said," Raditz replied, folding his arms. "Let's just hope he's in a good mood." "If he isn't," Kakarot said with a smirk, "we'll just have to adjust his attitude." Yamcha, Tien, and Piccolo landed beside the trio of Saiyans, dust swirling up as they touched down. Yamcha cracked his knuckles, grinning. "Don't worry, we've got your back." "Did you wish Krillin back yet?" Kakarot asked. "We brought him back this morning," Tien replied. "He said it might take a few hours to get here from King Kai's planet." Far from the group, in a deserted area far from civilization, Vegeta stepped out of his space pod, scanning the horizon. His scouter beeped as it locked onto nearby power levels. Nappa, towering beside him, punched a few buttons on his own scouter. "There are 2 power levels of 5,000 off in that direction," Nappa said, frowning as he turned to Vegeta. The tall, bald brute of a Saiyan wore the black and gold armor of the Saiyan army, while Vegeta stood proud in his royal blue and white armor, his flame-like hair waving in the wind. "That must be Kakarot and Raditz," Vegeta mused, a sly grin forming on his lips. Nappa scowled, glaring at the numbers flashing on his scouter. "This thing must be broken. There's no way that runt Raditz could be that strong." Vegeta chuckled, clearly amused by Nappa's disbelief. Afraid of being surpassed by a low-class warrior Nappa, he laughed again, enjoying his comrade's frustration. Who else could it be? I doubt anyone else on this pitiful planet could have those kinds of power levels. Nappa, still annoyed, hit his scouter again. "There's more. One power level at 4,400, another at 4,200, one at 3,600, and one at 3,000. Vegeta's grin widened. "It looks like they've been busy. Raditz was barely at 1,200 when he left. I'm curious to see how they've gotten so much stronger." Without further words, the two Saiyans launched into the air, speeding toward the power levels. "They're here," Raditz said, his tone tense as he scanned the horizon. Kakarot narrowed his eyes, sensing the approaching energy. "I can feel 2 of them. The stronger one is Vegeta," Raditz said. "The other is Nappa. Let's just hope they aren't looking to start trouble." "If they are," Kakarot said, a determined edge in his voice, "we'll handle them. Out here, we won't be disturbed by anyone. Besides, they're strong. They'd make great allies against Frieza. Several minutes later, Vegeta and Nappa touched down, their imposing forms towering over the Z-Fighters. Vegeta, his eyes scanning the group, was the first to speak. "I'm impressed," he said with a smirk. "I didn't think you'd be able to gather such a force of warriors from this pathetic planet." Yamcha bristled at the insult, stepping forward. "Who are you to call this planet pathetic?" He shot back, fists clenched. Yamcha stepped forward, his anger clear on his face. "Who are you to call this planet pathetic?" He shot back, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. Vegeta turned sharply, his eyes narrowing as he focused on Yamcha. "I am the prince of all Saiyans," Vegeta barked, his voice filled with pride and arrogance. "And you are nothing but a pathetic weakling." The insult was sharp, his gaze dismissive as he turned his attention away from Yamcha, as if he didn't even consider him worth a real response. He faced Kakarot and Raditz, his expression slightly more respectful, though not much. "I figured you'd keep your men in line," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. Kakarot's face remained calm, but there was a slight edge to his voice as he replied, "They're not my men, Vegeta. They're all volunteers. I treat them with respect, and they fight for our cause because they believe in it." Raditz, sensing the tension building, quickly interjected before things escalated further. "Enough of this. Let's get to the reason we called you here." Vegeta's expression softened only slightly. His curiosity piqued. "Yes," he said, his arms folding across his chest. "What's so important that you dragged me all the way to this backwater planet?" Kakarot took a deep breath, knowing the gravity of what he was about to propose. "We want your help in defeating Frieza." Nappa, who had been standing silently next to Vegeta, couldn't contain himself. "We dare not challenge Lord Frieza," he blurted out, his voice filled with disbelief. "Shut up, you fool!" Vegeta snapped, glaring at his brutish companion. "Let them finish." He turned back to Kakarot, his interest piqued. "You wish to challenge the strongest being in the galaxy?" Kakarot's eyes were unwavering. "Yes, Frieza destroyed our people. He needs to be stopped, and we're going to make him pay for what he did to our race." Vegeta's eyes narrowed slightly. Though he too desired power and strength, he had never dared to openly challenge Frieza. "And what exactly did Frieza do to our race?" Vegeta's voice carried a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Though he hated Frieza's control, he wasn't foolish enough to go against him without reason. Kakarot didn't say a word. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small recording device. He pressed a button, and a holographic message played, displaying Frieza's direct involvement in the destruction of planet Vegeta. The cold, merciless way in which Frieza had wiped out their people was laid bare before Vegeta's eyes. For a moment, Vegeta stood in silence, his face unreadable, but then his fists clenched and his body trembled with barely contained rage. "I can't believe it," he growled through gritted teeth. "All this time we've been Frieza's pawns, played for fools." His voice grew louder, angrier. "His blood will soak the ground at my feet for this." But before Vegeta could rant further, a sharp beeping sound interrupted him. His scouter blinked, signaling something was approaching. "What now?" Vegeta muttered, pressing the button on his scouter. He glanced at the readout and frowned. 6 large power levels are heading this way. Kakarot and Raditz exchanged confused glances. "Friends of yours?" Vegeta asked, his tone almost mocking as he looked toward the two brothers. Raditz shook his head. "Not ours," he said firmly. "We were expecting one more ally, but not 6. Nappa, who had been busy checking his own scouter, looked worried. "The highest one is at 24,000, he reported, "and they're coming straight for us." "Frieza must have sent them to follow us," Vegeta said darkly, his voice filled with realization. "He knows." Far above the planet's surface, Zarbon and Dodoria exited their pods, stretching their limbs after the long journey. Dodoria, his pink skin glistening in the sunlight, grinned maliciously as he checked his scouter. "Vegeta's definitely here," Dodoria said, his deep voice carrying a hint of excitement. "There are several power levels around 5,000 near his." Zarbon, ever calm and composed, brushed a lock of green hair away from his face. "This should be easy enough. Vegeta's strong, but he's nothing compared to us." He smiled confidently. "I'm just here to watch, really." Kui, who had come along with them, interrupted their banter. "I want first crack at Vegeta," he demanded, his fish-like features twisting with bitterness. "He and I have unfinished business." Zarbon shrugged, uninterested. "Fine by me. You can take him. I'll just enjoy the show." Dodoria sneered, his patience wearing thin. I don't even know why Frieza sent you here, he muttered, glaring at Kui. I could handle this on my own. With no further conversation, the group of Frieza's elite soldiers blasted off toward the location of the Saiyans, humans, and Namekian warriors. Minutes later, the 6 invaders touched down in the desert, facing the Z-fighters. The tension was thick in the air as Vegeta stepped forward to address Zarbon, the leader of Frieza's group. Zarbon, Vegeta said coldly, eyeing him with disdain. What are you doing here? Zarbon smiled coolly, brushing off Vegeta's hostility. I was about to ask you the same question, Vegeta. What brings the great prince of the Saiyans to such a miserable planet like this? Vegeta's lips curled into a smirk. Well, one of my fellow Saiyans found his long-lost brother. I figured I'd welcome him personally. Zarbon's eyes narrowed. You know, Frieza has a standing order to be informed of any new Saiyans that are discovered, he said, his tone sharp. Vegeta's voice dripped with sarcasm. I am their prince. It's only fitting I be informed first. You're so full of yourself, Kui cut in, his voice full of venom. Frieza should have killed you years ago. Zarbon, uninterested in Kui's rant, gave out orders. Kui, you take the 3 weaker Saiyans. Apula and Nappa will handle the 3 humans, and that Namekian. Chomper, he said, glancing at the small reptilian warrior beside him. You can take the kid. What about Vegeta? Kui demanded, eager to take on the Saiyan prince. You'll follow orders, Zarbon said sternly. Dodoria will handle Vegeta. Now go. Without hesitation, the 6 invaders charged toward their designated targets. Kui flew straight at Raditz, Kakarot, and Nappa, ready to fight all 3 at once. Meanwhile, Apple and Nappa zeroed in on Tien, Yamcha, and Piccolo, eager to crush the weaker fighters. Chomper, though visibly annoyed at being tasked with fighting a child, launched himself at Bardock, not willing to show any mercy. Dodoria remained behind, a cruel grin spreading across his face as he approached Vegeta. Give up now, Dodoria said with a mocking laugh, and maybe I'll go easy on you. Kui was the first to strike, his fist slamming into Nappa's gut with such force that the massive Saiyan doubled over in pain. You Saiyans are weak, Kui taunted, laughing as Nappa crumpled to the ground. He quickly turned his attention to Kakarot, launching a punch aimed directly at his face. But Kakarot was ready. He effortlessly blocked the attack and countered with a swift punch of his own, catching Kui off guard. Kakarot's fist smashed into Kui's face, sending the alien flying backward. Raditz, Kakarot said calmly. Help the others, I'll deal with this one. Chomper lunged at Bardock with a flying kick, aiming for the boy's head. Bardock, quick on his feet, flipped backward, dodging the attack. He landed smoothly and pushed off with his foot, drawing his sword in a single swift motion as he charged back at Chomper. The blade swung through the air with deadly precision, nearly catching Chomper off guard. The reptilian warrior barely dodged the attack, his scouter beeping as he read Bardock's power level. 3,000, Chomper thought, his eyes widening in shock. This kid was stronger than Kakarot had been the last time they fought. He hit his scouter again, double-checking the reading. This brat is dangerous, he realized. But before Chomper could react, Bardock's sword came inches from his head. He dodged just in time, his heart racing from the near miss. Apule and Nappa charged at the remaining warriors. Apule's fist slammed into Yamcha's stomach, causing the human fighter to double over in pain. Tien rushed to his friend's side, launching a flying kick aimed at Apule's head. But before the attack could connect, Nappa intervened, firing an energy blast that sent Tien crashing into a nearby mountain. Nappa then turned to block an incoming punch from Piccolo, retaliating with a powerful fist aimed at the Namekian's face. Vegeta wasted no time, launching himself at Dodoria with a speed that caught the larger warrior off guard. His fist connected with Dodoria's face, but the pink-skinned alien merely grinned, grabbing Vegeta's arm mid-punch and twisting it painfully behind his back. Really, Vegeta? Dodoria mocked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Did you honestly think you could defeat me? Vegeta growled in frustration. I'll tear you apart, Dodoria, he spat through clenched teeth. On the battlefield, Apula had Yamcha by the hair, his grip tight as he laughed cruelly. You're pathetic, Apula sneered, his voice filled with contempt. Not even worth sending to oblivion. With a flick of his wrist, Apule unleashed a point-blank energy blast into Yamcha's face. The desert bandit's lifeless body fell to the ground. His life ended in an instant. Tien, barely pulling himself out of the rubble, witnessed the brutal execution of his friend. Rage boiled within him. "You'll pay for that," he growled. Apule turned, grinning. "I'm sure I will," he said mockingly. Piccolo, struggling against Napple, managed to stretch his arm to twice its normal length, catching Napple off guard momentarily. But the alien warrior quickly blocked the strike and retaliated with another energy blast, sending Piccolo tumbling backward. Piccolo grunted in pain, his body aching from the impact. "This isn't good," he thought as the smoke cleared. He could feel the immense power radiating from his enemies. Despite all his training, all his efforts, he wasn't strong enough to make a difference. Bardock continued to strike at Chomper with his sword, the sharp blade slicing through the air with precision. The reptilian warrior moved just fast enough to avoid the deadly weapon, each swipe barely missing its mark. Chomper, feeling his confidence grow, saw an opening and swiftly kicked Bardock in the gut, forcing the boy to double over in pain and stagger backward. Wasting no time, Chomper raised both fists and slammed them down onto the back of Bardock's head in a brutal double axe handle, driving the young Saiyan into the ground. Dust and debris flew into the air as Bardock's body hit the dirt hard. "That's enough from you," Chomper muttered, grabbing the boy by his shirt and lifting him up effortlessly before smashing him back into the ground with brutal force. Bardock's groan of pain filled the air as he struggled to recover, his small body trembling from the impact. Chomper sneered, his eyes glowing with malevolence as he gathered energy in his hands. A blast of light shot from his palms, slamming into Bardock's unprotected body. The young Saiyan cried out, his body convulsing from the energy attack. "Now to finish this," Chomper said coldly. He bent down and picked up Bardock's fallen sword, raising it high above his head, ready to deliver the final blow. Before the blade could come down, a powerful hand grabbed Chomper's wrist, stopping him in mid-swing. "That's my nephew," Raditz growled, his eyes burning with fury as he held the reptilian warrior in place. "And he's under my protection." Chomper gritted his teeth, trying to force the sword down. "Raditz?" he hissed, shocked at how easily Raditz had stopped him. "How are you this strong? You were nothing but a weakling." Raditz's expression was cold, his grip on Chomper's wrist tightening. "I'm weak no longer," he said in a low, dangerous voice, "and you won't live long enough to find out why." With that, Raditz flung Chomper into the air with incredible force, the reptilian warrior dropping Bardock's sword as he was sent flying. Raditz smirked, raising his arms above his head. "Double Sunday!" he shouted, firing twin beams of energy that shot into the sky, colliding with Chomper. The reptilian warrior didn't even have time to scream before he was disintegrated in the blast. Meanwhile, Tien was struggling against Apula. Sweat dripped from his brow as he summoned the last of his strength. "Tri-beam! Ha!" he screamed, putting everything he had into his attack. A massive burst of energy shot from his hands, pushing Apula back, but it wasn't enough to do any real damage. Apule smirked as the energy dissipated, standing unscathed. "That's it?" he taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. "You're even weaker than I thought." Panting heavily, Tien fell to his knees, completely drained from using the tri-beam so many times in such quick succession. He could barely lift his head as Apula loomed over him. "You're finished," Apula said, raising his hand as energy crackled at his fingertips. "Time to die." But before Apule could strike, Nappa appeared behind him, grabbing the alien in a crushing body lock. "Not so fast," Nappa growled, holding Apule in place. "Let go of me," Apule shouted, struggling against Nappa's grip. "Do you really think you can beat me?" Nappa grinned, his muscles bulging as his energy began to rise. "I don't need to beat you," Nappa replied, his voice grim and determined. "I just need to take you with me." Apula's eyes widened in horror as he realized what Nappa was planning. "You wouldn't!" he shouted, thrashing desperately. "You'll die too!" Nappa's grin never faltered. "I know," he said calmly, his body glowing with an overwhelming surge of energy. "But I'll make sure you go with me." With a final explosion of power, Nappa's body erupted in a massive blast, consuming both him and Apula. When the dust cleared, there was nothing left of either warrior. Nappa, meanwhile, was mercilessly beating Piccolo, his massive fists slamming into the Namekian's body with brutal precision. "You dare defy Lord Frieza?" Nappa laughed, enjoying his dominance. "You'll die for your foolishness." With one final blast of energy, Nappa disintegrated Piccolo completely, leaving nothing but ashes. Far above, on the lookout, Kami began to fade from existence. Mr. Popo watched in horror, tears streaming down his face. "Kami! No!" he cried out as the ancient guardian vanished before his eyes, his life force tied to Piccolo's. Raditz landed behind Napple with a grim expression, his heart heavy with the loss of Piccolo. Without a word, he thrust his fist through Napple's back, the force of the blow punching clean through the alien's chest. Napple gasped in shock, his eyes wide with disbelief as he felt the life draining from him. You, he stammered weakly, his body trembling before collapsing to the ground, lifeless. Raditz pulled his arm free, his eyes narrowing as he looked down at the fallen warrior. "Your reign of terror is over," he muttered under his breath. He paused for a moment, looking up at the sky. "Your friends are avenged, brother," Raditz said softly. "Now I'll help you finish this." Before Raditz could move, a figure landed in front of him. It was Zarbon, his long green hair flowing in the wind as he smiled coolly. "Not so fast," Zarbon said, his voice smooth and confident. Raditz glared at him and wasted no time, throwing a punch at Zarbon with all his might. But Zarbon moved faster, catching Raditz's fist in mid-air. With a smirk, Zarbon twisted Raditz's arm behind his back, locking him in place. "You're too eager, Saiyan," Zarbon said casually, tightening his hold. "Let's just watch the fun, shall we? I'll stay out of the fight if you do." Krillin sighed heavily as he reached Earth's check-in station. "I'm coming, guys," he said softly, his voice filled with determination. "Just hold on a little longer." Back on the battlefield, Kakarot was fighting Kui, and despite Kui's arrogance, Kakarot was clearly in control. "Why aren't you dead yet?" Kui snarled in frustration, throwing a wild punch at Kakarot's head. "With a power level of 5,000, you shouldn't even be a challenge." Kakarot smiled confidently, sidestepping the punch with ease. He and Raditz had planned for this. They knew Frieza's men relied too heavily on their scouters. By suppressing their power levels, they had tricked their enemies into thinking they were weaker than they really were. Kui lunged at Kakarot again, but the Saiyan dodged effortlessly, moving almost faster than the eye could see. In one smooth motion, Kakarot caught Kui's arm and yanked him forward, driving his knee into Kui's face. Kui stumbled back, blood dripping from his nose, as he stared at Kakarot in disbelief. How did you?" he stammered, barely able to comprehend what had just happened. Before Kui could recover, Kakarot pressed the attack, launching a flurry of punches and kicks with lightning speed. Kui tried to block, but Kakarot's superior speed and strength quickly overwhelmed him. "What's the matter?" Kakarot taunted, a grin spreading across his face. "I thought I wasn't supposed to be much of a problem." Nearby, Vegeta was having a much harder time. Dodoria's massive fist crashed into Vegeta's face with the force of a freight train, sending the Saiyan Prince flying into the side of a cliff. The impact caused the rocks to crumble, burying Vegeta under a pile of rubble. Dodoria stood over the debris, laughing heartily. "So much for the mighty Saiyan rebellion," he mocked, his voice dripping with scorn. "You monkeys were never a threat to Lord Frieza. He kept you around because you were amusing, nothing more." Suddenly, the pile of rocks exploded outward as Vegeta burst free, his face twisted with fury. "You dare insult the Prince of all Saiyans?" Vegeta roared, his voice filled with anger. "I'll kill you." Vegeta charged at Dodoria, his fist aimed directly at the Pink Warrior's face, but Dodoria was ready. He caught Vegeta's punch easily, his smirk widening. "Oh, Vegeta," Dodoria said mockingly. "When will you learn that you're hopelessly outmatched?" At that moment, Krillin landed in the desert and surveyed the battlefield. He could see Kakarot battling a fish-faced alien. His friends seemed to have the upper hand in that fight. No need to interfere with that one, he thought. Off to the side, he saw a blue-green alien with long green hair holding Raditz's arm behind his back in a painful position. But the third battle caught his attention even more. He saw a fat pink alien fighting with a shorter Saiyan with flame-like hair. The pink alien was pummeling the other warrior mercilessly. "I wonder if that one is Vegeta or Nappa," he thought briefly. He decided that would be the best place to intervene. The short-balled warrior shot into the battle. Dodoria's laughter echoed across the barren desert as he squeezed Vegeta's throat in a vice-like grip. "Now you'll die, Saiyan," he sneered, his fingers tightening around the struggling prince's neck. Vegeta's vision blurred, and his body began to weaken from the lack of oxygen. But before Dodoria could finish him off, something hit him hard from behind. The sudden impact sent the hulking alien skidding across the dusty ground, a small cloud of sand and debris rising in his wake. Vegeta fell to his knees, gasping desperately as air rushed back into his lungs. His hand clutched his throat as he coughed, each breath feeling like fire in his chest. Slowly, he forced his head to turn toward his unlikely savior. Standing before him was a small, bald warrior with a fierce expression. Krillin, short but brimming with resolve, stared down at Vegeta. "What are you doing here, midget?" Vegeta spat, his pride still intact despite his near-death experience. "Saving your life, apparently," Krillin replied, not bothering to hide the annoyance in his voice. The conversation was short-lived, as Dodoria roared in rage, rising back to his feet. He was furious, but remarkably unharmed, shaking the dust off like it was nothing. "You little worm," he bellowed, his voice filled with malice. "I'll kill you for that." Krillin quickly adopted a fighting stance, his eyes scanning Dodoria's bulky frame. He could feel the overwhelming strength radiating from the pink brute, much stronger than him. "We're gonna have to take him down together," Krillin said firmly, glancing at Vegeta for support. Vegeta, already on his feet again, wiped the dirt from his armor with disdain. "Saiyans, fight alone," he declared arrogantly. Without a second thought, the proud prince launched himself at Dodoria, throwing a flurry of kicks and punches. Dodoria was ready this time, skillfully dodging most of Vegeta's strikes and returning with his own powerful blows. Vegeta managed to block a few, but Dodoria's strength and size were overwhelming. More hits landed than Vegeta would ever admit. Krillin watched in frustration, his brow furrowing as he let out an exasperated sigh. "Why does he always have to make things difficult?" he muttered. But he wasn't about to just sit back and watch. Krillin charged in, hoping to catch Dodoria off guard like before. But this time, Dodoria saw him coming. With a powerful backhand, he swatted Krillin aside like a fly. The bald warrior was thrown several feet, crashing into the dirt with a painful thud. Dodoria smirked, his focus returning to Vegeta. Seizing the brief distraction, Vegeta gathered his energy into his palm. With a furious shout, he unleashed a massive energy blast straight at Dodoria. The explosion rocked the battlefield, and for a moment, Vegeta thought he had gained the upper hand. But as the smoke cleared, Dodoria stood tall. Though a thin trickle of blood ran from the corner of his mouth, he wiped it away with a grin. "That all you've got? You caught me off guard, but it wasn't enough. You think you can actually beat me, Prince?" His voice dripped with amusement as he stepped forward, his massive frame moving faster than expected. Before Vegeta could react, Dodoria's fist slammed into his chest with crushing force. The blow sent the Saiyan prince sprawling to the ground, coughing up blood. Vegeta's body ached all over, but Dodoria wasn't done yet. The massive alien planted his foot on Vegeta's chest, pressing down with his full weight. "Now you die!" Dodoria snarled, a cruel grin on his face. Krillin, recovering from his earlier hit, watched in horror. He had no choice now. If he didn't act fast, Vegeta would be finished. Summoning his energy, Krillin raised his hand high above his head. The energy ball formed quickly, glowing with deadly intent as it spun and flattened into a sharp disc. "Destructo Disc!" Krillin shouted, hurling the deadly spinning blade toward Dodoria. Dodoria, too focused on ending Vegeta's life, didn't see the attack coming. The disc sliced through the air, and before the pink brute could react, it cleanly severed his head from his body. Dodoria's massive form crumpled to the ground beside Vegeta, lifeless. Krillin stood there, breathing heavily. "That was close, too close," he whispered, wiping sweat from his brow. Far above, Zarbon observed the scene with growing disbelief. Dodoria, his second in command, a fearsome warrior, was dead, decapitated by a bald little earthling. He tapped his scouter in frustration as it read the power level. 10,000? Zarbon murmured, eyes narrowing. He couldn't believe it. Dodoria had fallen to someone with a power level of only 10,000. No matter, he wouldn't make the same mistake. He wouldn't be caught off guard by such a weakling. From nearby, Raditz sneered up at Zarbon, his voice dripping with defiance. "Looks like your men aren't as tough as you thought." Zarbon's eyes flashed with anger as he twisted Raditz's arm further. The Saiyan winced in pain, but refused to give Zarbon the satisfaction of crying out. "I'll just have to kill you to even the score," Zarbon said coldly. Meanwhile, not far away, Kakarot dodged another energy blast from Qui, the fish-faced alien grunting in frustration as yet another attack failed to hit its mark. How was this possible? He had battled the Saiyan Prince to a draw before, yet now he couldn't even land a single meaningful strike against this warrior. Kakarot's speed was incredible, each movement smooth and precise. Kui's thoughts were interrupted when Kakarot suddenly lunged forward, his fist aiming straight for Kui's head. Kui reacted just in time, raising his arm to block the punch. He grinned for a brief moment, thinking he'd finally caught the Saiyan, but his satisfaction vanished as his fist passed through nothing but an afterimage. What? Kui spun around, confused and desperate to figure out where Kakarot had gone. Kui felt a chill run down his spine as Kakarot's voice came from behind him. "I'm tired of playing around with you," the Saiyan said, his tone calm but deadly. Kui spun around just in time to see Kakarot standing with his hands at his side, a ball of blue energy glowing between his palms. "Kamehameha!" Kakarot shouted, thrusting his hands forward. The beam of energy shot toward Kui with terrifying speed. Desperately, Kui raised his hands, trying to block the oncoming blast, but the sheer power of the attack was too much. The energy beam pushed him back, his feet digging trenches in the ground as he was forced toward a nearby rock formation. The blast detonated with a thunderous explosion, shaking the earth like a nuclear bomb had just gone off. When the smoke cleared, Kui was still standing, but barely. His armor was cracked, huge chunks missing, and his body was covered in burns. His breaths were ragged, his muscles trembling from the pain, but he wasn't finished yet. "Nice one," Kui growled, blood dripping from his mouth, but not enough. He turned to where Kakarot had been standing, ready to fight back, but the Saiyan was gone. "Where did you go?" Kui shouted, looking frantically in every direction. "Right here," Kakarot's voice answered from behind, a whisper near his ear. Before Kui could even turn around, Kakarot's open palm slammed into his lower back. A surge of energy shot through Kui's body, blasting a hole straight through his stomach. His eyes widened in shock as he fell to the ground, the life rapidly draining from his body. Krillin stood over Dodoria's lifeless body, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. He turned just in time to see Kakarot shoot an energy blast through Kui's midsection, the alien collapsing in a heap. Krillin smirked to himself. "I guess Kakarot doesn't need any help," he muttered. His eyes shifted to Vegeta, who was now shakily getting back to his feet. "I didn't need help either," Vegeta grumbled under his breath, brushing the dust from his armor. His pride was still very much intact, even if his body wasn't. Krillin raised an eyebrow, his frustration bubbling up. "You could just say thank you for saving your life," he shot back, crossing his arms. Before Vegeta could reply, both warriors turned their attention to Zarbon, who was now gathering energy to finish off Raditz. As much as Krillin disliked Raditz, the long-haired Saiyan was now on their side. And, more importantly, Krillin could sense the danger. Zarbon was stronger than his other opponents, and he wouldn't be so easy to take down. Krillin's mind raced. Could he make it in time? King Kai had warned him about using the Kaioken recklessly, especially going above AX2, but Krillin knew he had no other choice. Raditz was only seconds away from death. "Kaioken X3!" Krillin shouted, a red aurora exploding around him as his power level shot through the roof. With newfound speed, Krillin rocketed toward Zarbon, arriving just in time to drive his knee into the alien's face. Zarbon's energy blast, which had been meant for Raditz, went flying harmlessly into the distance as Zarbon himself was sent crashing into the dirt. Krillin landed in a crouch, letting the Kaioken fade before his body could take too much strain. He stood tall, taking a fighting stance, ready to hold his ground against Zarbon's inevitable retaliation. His body was already feeling the effects of the X3 Kaioken. It was risky to push it any further. Raditz, still recovering from his near-death experience, turned to look at the small, bald warrior now standing beside him. He couldn't help but grin. "So I see the Dragon Balls worked after all," Raditz said, impressed. "Thanks for the help, and sorry for killing you." Krillin kept his eyes on Zarbon, who was getting back to his feet, but responded with a curt nod. "You're welcome," he said, his voice tense. "Who are these guys anyway? I thought we were just dealing with a couple of Saiyans." Kakarot, who had just landed beside his brother and childhood friend, answered before Raditz could. "They followed us. I'm pretty sure they're Frieza's men." Raditz, rubbing his arm, confirmed Kakarot's suspicion. "That one there is Zarbon," he said, nodding toward the elegant but dangerous-looking alien. Frieza's top lieutenant, Zarbon, now standing once more, dusted himself off. That hit from the little earthling had hurt far more than it should have. He glared at the group, Kakarot, Raditz, Krillin, and Vegeta, all standing ready to fight. His eyes narrowed as he realized he wouldn't be able to defeat them in his current form. He needed more power. With a low growl, Zarbon's body began to change. His once handsome features twisted and contorted, growing monstrous and grotesque. His muscles bulged, his skin darkened, and his power skyrocketed. Vegeta could only stare in horror as his scouter struggled to read Zarbon's new power level. The numbers kept climbing until the device overheated and exploded right on Vegeta's face. His heart sank. How could Zarbon be this strong? The realization hit Vegeta like a ton of bricks. If Frieza's lieutenant was this powerful, what chance did he have against Frieza himself? It seemed hopeless. Kakarot's expression darkened as he felt Zarbon's rising power. He turned to the others, his voice steady but serious. "We'll take him together." Without waiting for a reply, Kakarot charged at Zarbon, his fists flying. Zarbon dodged Kakarot's first punch with ease, retaliating with a brutal fist to the Saiyan's stomach. Kakarot gasped in pain, blood splattering from his mouth as the blow landed with crushing force. Before Zarbon could follow up, Raditz rushed in, unleashing a series of punches and kicks at the monstrous alien. Zarbon, however, was unfazed, blocking Raditz's strikes effortlessly. With a mocking laugh, he drove an elbow into Raditz's face, sending him staggering back. "Kaioken X3!" Krillin shouted, joining the fray. His fist connected with Zarbon's face, the force sending the alien flying backward. But Zarbon quickly corrected himself in midair, shooting back toward Krillin with incredible speed. The alien unleashed a flurry of attacks, each one faster and more powerful than the last. Even with the X3 Kaioken, Krillin was barely able to block the blows. If this keeps up, I won't last much longer. Just when it seemed like Zarbon would overpower him, Kakarot appeared, attacking from behind. The two warriors fought side by side, their combined strength beginning to break through Zarbon's defenses. But then, without warning, Krillin felt his body start to fail. The Kaioken aura flickered and then vanished as his power dropped sharply. Zarbon didn't hesitate. He seized the opening, driving a powerful fist into Krillin's stomach. Krillin's eyes widened in shock as the air was knocked from his lungs, and he collapsed to the ground, unconscious. "Kakarot!" Raditz called out as he regrouped with his brother. "Remember the moonball technique? It might be our best shot." Kakarot frowned. "Last time you lost control and nearly destroyed everyone around you," he reminded his brother. "I don't think it'll be necessary. If we work together with Vegeta, we can overpower him." Raditz shot Kakarot a skeptical look. "Vegeta doesn't play well with others," he muttered. Their conversation was abruptly cut short as Zarbon slammed his fist into Raditz's gut, following it up with a sharp elbow to his face. The Saiyan warrior staggered, blood pouring from his mouth. Zarbon moved swiftly, grabbing Raditz's tail before Kakarot could react. With a sadistic grin, Zarbon yanked hard, tearing the tail off in one clean motion. Raditz screamed in agony. Zarbon grinned wickedly as he stood over Raditz, the Saiyan's tail lying limp in his hand. "You won't be transforming now," Zarbon sneered, his laughter cutting through the dry desert air. Tossing the severed tail aside like trash, he turned his attention back to Kakarot, who was already charging at him, fists ready. Kakarot swung a punch at Zarbon, but the alien dodged effortlessly. In retaliation, Zarbon aimed a powerful kick at Kakarot's midsection, but his attack hit nothing but air. It was just an afterimage. The real Kakarot appeared behind him, hands raised and glowing with energy. He unleashed a blast aimed straight at Zarbon's back, but the alien swatted the attack aside like it was nothing. Before Kakarot could react, Zarbon grabbed him by the leg. With a smirk, Zarbon swung Kakarot around in a wide arc and slammed him face first into the hard desert ground. The impact sent up a cloud of dust, and before Kakarot could even recover, Zarbon landed on top of him, his heavy boot pressing painfully into Kakarot's back. With a swift, cruel yank, Zarbon tore off Kakarot's tail, rendering him powerless to transform as well. Kakarot groaned in pain, his body aching from the brutal assault, but Zarbon wasn't done. His eyes shifted to Vegeta, who was still frozen in shock. The Saiyan prince had been watching the whole scene unfold, his pride shattered as he realized just how outmatched they were. Zarbon charged at Vegeta, driving his elbow into the prince's face with brutal force, sending Vegeta hurtling through the air. Before Vegeta could even register the blow, Zarbon was on him, delivering a relentless series of punches and kicks as the prince tumbled helplessly through the air. Vegeta finally crashed into the ground with a bone-shaking thud. Dazed and barely able to move, he struggled to get up, but Zarbon grabbed him by the tail and pulled hard, ripping it clean off. "Now we don't have to worry about any giant apes," Zarbon taunted, laughing cruelly. Vegeta coughed up blood as he lay on the ground, utterly humiliated. He'd lost his tail, his symbol of power. The thought was unbearable, but before he could even reflect on the shame, Zarbon was on him again, pummeling him mercilessly. Blow after blow landed on Vegeta's already broken body, each one more painful than the last. "Stop it!" Kakarot's voice rang out, strained but full of defiance. He was standing once again, battered and bruised, his clothes torn to shreds, but his spirit was unbroken. He stood tall, hand outstretched, his fierce eyes locked on Zarbon. Zarbon chuckled, not even bothering to look up from his merciless beating of Vegeta. "Or what?" Kakarot's expression darkened. "Or you'll die." Zarbon finally stopped, standing tall over Vegeta's crumpled form. He threw his head back and laughed. Big talk from such a weakling. But Zarbon's laughter was cut short as Raditz, recovered and furious, appeared out of nowhere and drove his knee into Zarbon's face with all the force he could muster. Zarbon was sent flying, and before he could regain control, Kakarot was already there. With incredible speed, Kakarot's fist drove into Zarbon's gut, doubling him over in pain. He followed up with a series of punches and kicks, using the advantage Raditz had given him. For a brief moment, it looked like Zarbon was on the ropes, the combined assault of the two brothers finally breaking through his defenses. But the moment didn't last. With a roar, Zarbon regained his composure and fired a blast of energy directly at Kakarot at point-blank range. The explosion sent Kakarot flying back, skidding across the ground as Zarbon followed him, delivering a relentless barrage of punches and kicks that left the Saiyan no room to recover. Far away, Bardock, who had been lying in the dust, barely conscious, opened his eyes to the sight of his father being beaten into the ground. His heart raced and he clenched his fists. He had to do something. Anything, but what could he do against a monster like Zarbon? Then it hit him. He remembered the technique his father had taught him long ago, the moon ball. It was risky, but it was the only chance they had. Summoning every ounce of his energy, Bardock raised his hand toward the sky. A glowing ball of energy formed in his palm. "Moon ball!" he shouted, hurling it into the air. The glowing sphere hovered high above them, illuminating the battlefield with an eerie light. Bardock's heart raced as he stared up at the ball. His body trembled and his breathing grew ragged. His pulse quickened, and soon his body began to change. His face elongated into a snout, his teeth growing sharp, and blue fur sprouted across his body. In seconds, Bardock's body expanded and grew until he stood as a massive, fearsome blue Uzaru, towering over Zarbon. The massive ape growled, its eyes glowing with rage. With a roar, Bardock unleashed a devastating energy blast from his mouth. The sheer power of the attack sent Zarbon flying through the air, the alien barely able to control his trajectory. Bardock, now fully transformed into his giant ape form, didn't waste a second. He leapt into the air after Zarbon, swinging a massive fist that collided with the alien, sending him crashing into the ground with bone-breaking force. Zarbon groaned in pain, his body aching from the assault. How could he be losing? He righted himself, struggling to stand, and shot a blast of energy at the Uzaru. The attack hit Bardock's shoulder, causing the massive ape to roar in pain, but it wasn't enough to stop him. Before Zarbon could press the attack further, Kakarot appeared once again, this time driving his knee into Zarbon's back. Zarbon twisted in midair and retaliated with a fierce punch to Kakarot's chest, sending the Saiyan flying away once more. Zarbon stood there panting, his eyes flicking between the massive blue Uzaru and Kakarot, who was struggling to get back up. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had been winning, and now everything was falling apart. "Double Sunday!" Raditz bellowed, his voice filled with desperation as he channeled every last ounce of his energy into his signature attack. The twin beams of light shot forth, tearing through the air with terrifying speed. Zarbon, who had been preoccupied fighting Kakarot and Bardock, was caught completely off guard. The attack struck him with full force, sending him spiraling away from his opponents. His confident sneer wiped off his face as he crashed hard into the ground. Kakarot seized the opportunity. "He," he yelled, his hands thrust forward as the brilliant blue beam of energy erupted from his palms. Zarbon, disoriented, turned just in time to see the attack speeding toward him. His eyes widened in panic, but it was too late. The blast slammed into him like a speeding freight train, smashing him into the earth with a tremendous crash that shook the battlefield. Groaning in pain, Zarbon slowly struggled to his feet, his transformation already beginning to fade. His once elegant form now reverted back to his normal state. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth as he clutched his side. This is becoming more troublesome than I thought, he muttered, gritting his teeth. But before Zarbon could fully recover, a massive fist smashed into him, sending him crashing back into the ground. This time, the fist didn't let go. It wrapped around him, squeezing with immense force. Zarbon gasped as the pressure built, his ribs creaking under the grip. The source of the attack, a massive, furious ape, roared down at him. Its red eyes gleamed with fury, and its grip tightened further. Zarbon's mind raced, his body screaming in pain. He could feel his bones starting to crack. How? Zarbon wheezed, his mind struggling to comprehend. He had made sure to remove the tails of every Saiyan he encountered. Then it hit him. The blue-haired boy, the one from earlier in the battle. He had assumed the child was dead. Clearly, he had been wrong. Kakarot flew up into the sky, surveying the scene below. His son, now in his great ape form, was crushing Zarbon mercilessly. I have to end this before Zarbon finds a way out, Kakarot muttered. Acting quickly, he raised his hand, mimicking one of his friend's moves. Destructo Disc, he shouted. The energy disc formed rapidly in his hand and shot forward with deadly precision. It zipped through the air and sliced clean through Zarbon's neck, severing his head in one clean motion. As Zarbon's lifeless body slumped to the ground, Kakarot wasted no time. He cupped his hands to his side, concentrating his energy once more. Kamehameha, he shouted, firing a beam of energy toward Bardock's artificial moon. The beam hit the glowing sphere, shattering it into countless shards of light. With the moon ball gone, massive form began to shrink back down. The boy reverted to his normal state, unconscious from the strain of the transformation. In another part of the battlefield, Kui stumbled into his spaceship, his body battered and bruised, his vision blurred, and each breath he took felt like a stab to the chest. He knew he was dying without medical help. Still, he had something more valuable than his own life: information. With trembling hands, he hit the controls, and the ship slowly lifted off. As the stars stretched out before him, Kui's mind was focused on one thing: Lord Frieza. The Saiyans had mentioned something about Dragon Balls and bringing someone back from the dead. That phrase had triggered a distant memory, the legend of the magical balls of Namek. If the Namekian warrior he saw on the battlefield was anything to go by, the legend must be true. Frieza would want to hear about this, and maybe, just maybe, delivering this news would be enough to keep him alive. Back on the ground, Kakarot looked up just in time to see Kui's spaceship speeding into the sky. His eyes narrowed in frustration. Damn, one of them got away. He's heading straight for Frieza, Vegeta growled, his voice cold and accusing. You were too soft. You should have finished him. I didn't let him live on purpose, Kakarot snapped. I thought he was dead. Doesn't matter now, Raditz chimed in, shaking his head. Frieza would have sent someone to investigate anyway when none of his men returned. That's fine, Vegeta said with a smirk. Once I'm healed, I'll take care of Frieza myself. Krillin, standing nearby, crossed his arms, concern etched on his face. So, what do we do now? Raditz glanced over at him. We need to find the Dragon Balls, your Earth ones. We can wish back Nappa and the others. We'll need as many fighters as possible to face Frieza. Kakarot sighed, shaking his head. We can't. Piccolo's dead, and when he died, the Dragon Balls vanished too. He and Kami were linked, and Kami's gone now. Without him, the Dragon Balls are useless. Vegeta's eyes narrowed, intrigued for the first time in the conversation. The Namek? Kakarot turned to him, confused. What about him? Raditz answered for him. Piccolo was an Namekian, wasn't he? Vegeta's expression darkened as he muttered to himself. So the legends are true. What legends? Kakarot asked, sensing something important. The legend of the magic balls of Namek, Vegeta replied, his voice low and dangerous. Whoever gathers all 7 of them is granted any wish they desire. That sounds like our Dragon Balls, Krillin exclaimed. Raditz nodded. If the Dragon Balls on Earth were made by a Namek, it makes sense there'd be more of them on their home planet. and I'll use them to wish for immortality," Vegeta declared, suddenly whirling around and making a beeline for his ship. "Wait, we need to heal first," Raditz shouted after him. "No time," Vegeta called back, his voice filled with excitement. "I can almost taste my immortality." And with that, the Saiyan Prince blasted off into space before anyone could stop him. Raditz cursed under his breath. "We can't let him get immortality. It'll go straight to his head." "Why not?" Kakarot asked, genuinely puzzled. "Wouldn't he help us fight Frieza?" Raditz shook his head. If Vegeta becomes invincible, he might defeat Frieza, but he'd become worse than him. He wouldn't stop there. "Then we have to follow him," Kakarot said, determination burning in his eyes. "We can't let him make that wish." Raditz nodded, but his voice grew serious. "And we need to be ready for the possibility of running into Frieza. If Vegeta figured out the Dragon Balls, it won't take long for someone in Frieza's army to put it together too. Let's regroup at Capsule Corp and plan from there," Kakarot suggested. He reached into a small pouch tied to his waist. "I've only got 3 senzu beans left." He tossed one to Krillin, then knelt down and placed another into Tien's mouth. Finally, he gave the last one to Bardock, who was still unconscious. "You guys need these more than I do," he said quietly. "So you want to go to Namek and gather their Dragon Balls?" Bulma asked, her tone skeptical. "Yeah," Kakarot replied, having just finished explaining everything to her. "We need to stop Vegeta before he can wish for immortality." Bulma crossed her arms, deep in thought. "Well, with the ships Frieza's men left behind, we should be able to get there. But there's a problem." Raditz frowned. "What's the problem?" "Frieza's men would have booby-trapped their ships," Bulma said, matter-of-factly. Kakarot nodded, thinking it through. "That leaves us with 3 ships, right?" "Not exactly," Bulma replied. "My dad and I have been working on your ships. We've removed the engines and we're building one bigger ship. It's almost ready." Raditz's eyes widened. "How soon can we leave?" "It'll be ready in 2 days," Bulma said. "The second ship won't be done for at least a week." Kakarot raised an eyebrow. "Why is the second one taking so long?" Bulma grinned proudly. "We've been making some upgrades. It'll be faster, and I've been installing an improved gravity room into it." Kakarot's face lit up with excitement. "How much better is it?" "It can go up to 100 times Earth's gravity," Bulma said proudly, arms crossed, her lips curling into a smirk. "That should keep the 2 of you satisfied for a while, at least." Raditz, leaning against the wall with his arms folded, raised an eyebrow. "How long until we'll have more sensu beans?" "About 10 days, Bulma replied. "I've had some success replicating the plants that grow them, but I can't make them grow any faster than Korin can." Kakarot nodded, thinking, "All right, when the first ship is ready, we'll send Krillin and Tien to Namek. Raditz and I will stay behind until the second ship and the sensu beans are ready. Then we'll follow." "I should be able to handle Vegeta if I run into him," Krillin chimed in confidently. "I'm getting the hang of the Kaioken. It's not as hard as I thought it would be." Kakarot looked at him seriously. "Vegeta's still as beat up as we are. He'll need time to recover, but when he does, he'll be stronger than ever. If we're lucky, we won't have to confront him right away. We just need to find the Dragon Balls before he does, and we've got the Dragon Radar on our side." Krillin nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Shouldn't be too hard, right?" Raditz, however, wasn't convinced. "Just stay out of Frieza's way. If he or any of his men show up on Namek, your best option is to hide a Dragon Ball and wait for us." Kakarot's expression tightened. "So we've got a plan then. Any objections?" At that moment, Bardock entered the room. The boy, who had been listening from the hallway, finally spoke up. "I have one," he said, determination in his eyes. "I should go with Krillin and Tien. They might need my help." Bulma turned to him, her face filled with motherly concern. "It could be dangerous, dear." Bardock's voice was steady. "I know, but I did pretty well against Frieza's men, didn't I? If things go bad, I can transform. That'll give us a better chance of survival." Kakarot stayed silent for a few moments, studying his son's determined face. He didn't want to put Bardock in harm's way, but the boy had a point. "All right," he said finally. "You can go, but be careful." "I'm going too," Bulma added, suddenly, her voice firm. Bardock turned to her, eyes wide. "No, Mom, it's too dangerous." Bulma wasn't backing down. "Someone has to make sure you don't get into trouble. Besides, your dad and Raditz won't be too far behind us." Tien, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Bulma, do you think you could add a gravity room to the first ship?" "I could probably do that," Bulma replied, thinking it over. "But it'll have to be the older model." Krillin, curious, asked, What's the difference? The older model only goes up to 10 times Earth's gravity, Bulma explained. It's better than nothing, Krillin said with a shrug. All right, let's get some sleep, Tien suggested. We want to be ready as soon as the ship is finished. The group began to disperse, heading off to their rooms at Capsule Corp. As Krillin was about to leave, Kakarot called out to him. Hey, Krillin. Krillin turned, his face curious. What's up, buddy? Kakarot's expression was serious. I need you to teach me the Kaioken before you leave. Krillin's eyes widened. Kaioken? It took me months to learn it. I don't know if you can get it down in just 2 days. Meanwhile, far from Earth, Nappa stood before the towering figure of King Yemma. The massive ogre eyed him with a mixture of curiosity and sternness. You certainly have a complicated record, King Yemma began, glancing down at his book of judgments. First, you spend years murdering countless innocent people in the service of Frieza. Then, you turn around and sacrifice yourself to save a planet you shouldn't care about. Nappa stood silently, his large frame tense. He knew what this was, judgment. The strange part was that while most souls who passed through here appeared as floating clouds, he still had his body. That had to mean something, right? King Yemma cleared his throat, continuing. What I want to know is, why the sudden change in behavior? Nappa's fists clenched at his sides. I found out our whole existence was a lie, he said, his voice gruff but steady. Frieza destroyed our entire race, enslaving us to do his dirty work for years. He twisted me, convinced me to help raise Prince Vegeta to be as cruel and twisted as he is. When I learned the truth, I couldn't let it stand. I knew I couldn't defeat Frieza myself, but Raditz and his brother, Kakarot, were strong enough. I sacrificed myself so they could live and keep fighting. King Yemma stroked his chin, clearly thinking things over. Your sacrifice wasn't in vain. Your friends did manage to defeat their enemies, but now I have to decide what to do with you. Nappa nodded grimly. I understand if I'm sent to hell. I've done a lot of bad things. I know one good deed doesn't make up for all the wrong I've done. King Yemma gave a slight nod. That's true, but you've impressed me. I've decided to give you a second chance. He leaned forward slightly. Word has reached me that your friends may use the Namekian Dragon Balls to wish you back to life. If that happens and you want to avoid hell, you'll need to train hard under King Kai. And once you're back, you'll need to keep walking the straight and narrow. Nappa's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly nodded. I understand. I won't waste this chance. Good, King Yemma said. To reach King Kai, you'll need to follow Snake Way to the end. Nappa turned to see the long, winding stone path stretching off into the distance, high above a sea of yellow clouds. He gave a respectful bow. I'll start immediately, sir. See that you do, King Yemma replied, before adding, oh, and you'll have some company. The one called Yamcha and the Namekian, Piccolo, will also be training with you. A small smirk tugged at Nappa's lips. He remembered those two from the battle on Earth. They were about as strong as he was. Having some sparring partners would make the journey more interesting. The next morning, Kakarot sat cross-legged in meditation, facing Krillin. The two of them were silent, the soft hum of energy filling the room as they prepared for training. Okay, Krillin began, breaking the silence. To do the Kaioken, you first need to focus your energy, like you're getting ready to fire a blast. But instead of releasing that energy, you're going to keep it inside your body. Then, you push your energy higher and higher until it exceeds your normal limits. As he explained, Krillin demonstrated. Slowly, his power rose until his white aura flared around him. Then, his energy spiked even further, and his aura turned a deep crimson. His power had nearly doubled. After a few moments, the red aura faded, and his energy returned to normal. That was a Kaioken X2, Krillin said, wiping a bit of sweat from his forehead. It's tough, and it puts a lot of strain on your body. You'll have to work hard to even use it at this level, let alone push it further. What's the difference between just the Kaioken and the Kaioken X2? Kakarot asked, his brow furrowed in concentration. Krillin crossed his arms and explained patiently. The Kaioken is a technique King Kai developed to raise your power beyond its normal limits. So anytime you use it, you're using Kaioken. When you hear X2 or X3, it's more like a mental guide. It helps you focus, so you don't push your body too far. A Kaioken X2 tells your body to stop when your power doubles. The first time I did it, my power barely increased before my body couldn't handle it. So basically, Kakarot said, piecing it together, if it doesn't fully double my power, it's just called Kaioken. Exactly, Krillin confirmed with a nod. All right, let me try, Kakarot said. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes to focus. His energy started to build inside him, and after a few moments, a faint crimson glow surrounded him. But before it could grow stronger, his aura flickered out, and he collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. Krillin rushed over to him. Are you okay? Yeah, Kakarot said between breaths. I'm fine, but I'm not back to full strength yet. Krillin offered him a hand and helped him to his feet. For a first try, that wasn't bad at all. I could feel the energy shifting correctly. Once you're healed up, you'll get the hang of it in no time. Kakarot rubbed the back of his neck, a small smile on his face. Thanks, I'll keep practicing. I can't believe how fast you're picking it up, Krillin added with a laugh. But then again, you've always been quick with energy techniques. Meanwhile, Bardock stood outside, looking up at the ship they were preparing to board for their journey to Namek. The spaceship was round, standing nearly 20 feet tall, and though it would fit 4 people, it was clearly going to be a cramped trip. You ready to go, kid? Krillin called out as he walked up behind Bardock. The bald warrior was dressed casually in loose pants, a jacket, and a ball cap, trying to appear relaxed before the intense mission ahead. Bardock glanced over his shoulder, his sword strapped firmly to his back. Yeah, I'm ready, Krillin smiled. You look a lot like your dad. Well, except for the hair. Bardock grinned at the comment. He knew he did resemble his father, especially now that he was wearing a green fighting uniform with a black undershirt, almost identical to Kakarot's. Bulma approached them, hands on her hips. All right, let's get aboard. We've got Dragon Balls to find. The group climbed into the ship, with Bardock following his mother and Krillin. Where's Tien? Bardock asked, as he glanced around the cabin. I'm here. Tien's voice came from inside. He was already sitting, looking calm and focused. All right, let's get going, Bulma said as she walked up to the controls, her face full of determination. Far away, Frieza lounged in his throne room, tapping his fingers rhythmically on the armrest. His tail swayed slowly behind him, showing how deep in thought he was. Just hours earlier, his scouts had reported Kui's space pod arriving at the base. Kui, however, was in critical condition and had been rushed to the medical bay. That irritated Frieza, but not as much as the lack of news about the others he had sent to Earth. Any sign of the others I sent with Kui? Frieza asked, his voice cold and calm, yet laced with menace. A temporary advisor, an alien whose name Frieza hadn't bothered to learn, stepped forward nervously. No sign of the others, Lord Frieza, the advisor stammered. This was the 5th temporary advisor Frieza had gone through since sending Zarbon to Earth. The previous ones had all annoyed him in some way and paid the price. The henchman quickly turned back to his control panel, fiddling with it for a moment before his eyes widened. Sire, he called out, I've detected another pod passing close to our location. Whose pod is it? Frieza asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. It appears to be Vegeta's, the henchman replied. Frieza's interest peaked. And where is it heading? The advisor's fingers danced over the panel as he checked. It's on course for the planet Namek, sire. Frieza's eyes narrowed, his tail swishing faster now. Send a message to the Ginyu Force. Tell them to intercept Vegeta and bring him back to me. Right away, sire, the advisor said, rushing to relay the orders. Frieza leaned back in his throne, pondering. Vegeta, going to Namek, he muttered to himself. Why would he be heading there alone after his encounter with my elite forces? Then it hit him. Vegeta was after the legendary Dragon Balls of Namek, those magic orbs, said to grant any wish to whoever gathered them. Vegeta must have been planning to wish for immortality. That was the only reason he'd risk rebelling. Frieza smiled cruelly at the thought. Wait! Frieza called out suddenly, stopping his advisor from leaving. Yes, Lord Frieza? The henchman asked, confused. Prepare my ship, Frieza commanded, his eyes gleaming with excitement. And tell the Ginyu Force that I'll be joining them on Namek personally. All right, Bulma said from the control panel. We're out of the atmosphere and on our way. You can unbuckle now. Bardock was the first to spring up from his seat, stretching his arms. I'm gonna check out the gravity room. I'll join you, Tien said, getting up from his seat, his calm demeanor unshaken by the start of the journey. Me too, Krillin added, eager to keep up with the others. As the 3 warriors headed for the gravity room, Bulma smiled to herself. Boys will be boys, she muttered. Then she called out to them. Be careful in there. We don't have any sensu beans on board, so don't get yourselves hurt. We need you all in one piece when we reach Namek. No problem, Krillin responded with a thumbs up. I'll go easy on them. The 3 of them made their way into the gravity chamber, excitement building as they prepared for training. How high should we set the gravity? Tien asked, eyeing the controls. Well, Krillin started, King Kai's planet was about 10 times Earth's gravity, so that works for me. Bardock nodded. Raditz, my dad, and I trained at 5 times gravity before the battle with Frieza's men, but this room can go up to 10 times Earth's gravity. So let's push ourselves. Don't hold back on my account, Tien said, his tone confident. I'll keep up. All right, 10 times it is, Krillin said, turning the knob on the console. The room's lights shifted to red, signaling that the gravity had increased. Instantly, Bardock felt the crushing force bear down on him. His stomach dropped, and his legs felt heavy, as if the floor was pulling him down. Training at 5 times gravity had been tough, but this was something else. Twice the weight was like moving through molasses. He could feel his muscles straining with each movement. Krillin, on the other hand, didn't seem fazed at all. He moved with ease, his experience from training in this level of gravity showing clearly. This feels just like old times, he said with a grin. Bardock grit his teeth, adjusting his stance. It's gonna take a bit of getting used to, he muttered, sweat already forming on his brow. He glanced at Tien, who, despite the increased pressure, remained steady and calm, his disciplined nature shining through. We'll manage, Tien said with a small smile. Let's not waste any time. Let's start with some light sparring, Tien said, his expression focused. He turned to Bardock, a smirk tugging at his lips. Come on, Bardock. Let's see if we can give Krillin a workout. Before Tien even finished speaking, both he and Bardock lunged at Krillin, their combined energy fierce. Bardock was first to strike, aiming a swift punch at Krillin's midsection, but Krillin, with his sharp reflexes, blocked it effortlessly. Before Krillin could think of a counterattack, Tien was on him, throwing a rapid barrage of punches and kicks toward his head. You're slower than I remember, Tien, Krillin taunted, easily dodging the flurry of attacks, his face showing no strain. I'll catch up, Tien replied through gritted teeth. Just need to adjust to this gravity. Before Krillin could respond, a sudden sharp kick hit him from behind. Bardock had moved with such stealth that even Krillin's well-honed instincts had missed it. Kakarot had definitely trained the boy well. Krillin stumbled slightly, but quickly regained his balance. He spun around, facing Bardock, and delivered a counterpunch right into the young Saiyan's stomach. Bardock gasped, doubling over from the blow, but Krillin didn't follow up. Instead, he quickly turned back to Tien, who was already launching another wave of punches and kicks, his movements faster and more precise. Krillin moved fluidly, his body weaving in and out of Tien's strikes, blocking and dodging with ease. But Bardock wasn't about to sit on the sidelines. He jumped back into the fray, his fists flying as he timed his attacks to match Tien's, creating a seamless rhythm between the two of them. Krillin began to pant, his breath coming in short gasps as he struggled to keep up with the relentless assault. He was stronger than both of them, but the coordination between Tien and Bardock was impeccable. Just as Krillin blocked one of Tien's punches, Bardock's knee drove into his side, knocking the wind out of him. Krillin staggered, barely recovering in time before Tien slammed a double-fisted axe handle onto his head, sending him crashing to the ground. Krillin raised his head just in time to see Bardock's foot coming straight at his face. Kaioken X2, Krillin shouted, and in an instant, his aura flared a deep red, doubling his power. He raised his arm, blocking Bardock's kick with ease. Before Bardock could react, Krillin's fist shot out like lightning, hitting him squarely in the stomach and sending him sprawling. Tien, seeing his chance, charged at Krillin, but before he could land a hit, Krillin spun around and landed a powerful punch to Tien's gut, knocking him out of the fight too. A minute later, after regaining his breath, Tien rubbed his sore stomach and said, "You'll have to teach me that Kaioken technique. It could really come in handy if we run into trouble on Namek." Bardock, still catching his breath, nodded in agreement. "Yeah, that'd be good. By the way," he added, turning to Krillin with a determined grin, "when this is all over, I want a rematch, somewhere with enough room for us to fight full out." Krillin chuckled. "I don't think more space would help you that much." Bardock crossed his arms, confident. If I had room to transform, the outcome would be different. Krillin quickly shook his head, laughing nervously. "No thanks. I saw what you did to Zarbon when you transformed. I definitely don't want to be on the receiving end of that." Nappa stood at the end of Snake Way, gazing up at the small green planet hovering overhead. It had taken him only a few days to reach the end of the long, winding path. He chuckled to himself. No point waiting for the slowpokes. he muttered, cracking his knuckles. He had left both Piccolo and Yamcha far behind after only a few minutes of running. "Who are you calling a slowpoke?" Piccolo's voice growled from behind him. Nappa turned, smirking. "You, obviously." Piccolo narrowed his eyes, fists clenched. "Watch your tongue, Sane, or you might lose it." Nappa just laughed in response. "You haven't been paying attention, Namekian. Saiyans get stronger after every tough fight. I'm far stronger than you now." Piccolo scowled, his pride stinging. It felt like everyone was surpassing him lately. How was he ever going to achieve his goal of taking over Earth if he kept falling behind everyone? Before the tension could escalate further, Yamcha landed beside them, slightly out of breath. "If you two are done arguing, how about we focus on why we're here? Let's go meet King Kai and start training." The three warriors lifted into the air, heading toward the small planet above them. But halfway there, the intense gravity of King Kai's planet took over, pulling them down fast. Piccolo and Yamcha hit the ground hard, the unexpected weight nearly knocking the air out of them. Nappa, however, floated down gently, clearly unbothered by the gravity. "No wonder Krillin got so strong here," Yamcha said, pushing himself up slowly. "This gravity is insane." Nappa laughed smugly. "Maybe for weaklings like you." Just then, a voice called out, "So you made it." The voice belonged to a short blue alien with two antennae sticking out of his head. "You must be King Kai," Yamcha said, wiping the sweat from his brow. "That's right," King Kai replied, smiling. "Normally I'd make you tell me a joke before I train you, but watching you bicker was enough entertainment for me." Piccolo glared at him. "How dare you talk to me like that?" King Kai didn't flinch. "I dare because you need me to get stronger. If you want to train with me, you'll need to drop the attitude." Before Piccolo could respond, Yamcha quickly interjected. "So what do we start with?" King Kai, his usual cheerful demeanor now more serious, said, "First, you'll need to adjust to the gravity on this planet. It takes some getting used to. Once you've done that, I can teach you the Kaioken." In the gravity room aboard the ship, Bardock, Tien, and Krillin sat meditating, their eyes closed as they focused on their energy. "To master Kaioken, you need to find your center first," Krillin explained calmly. "Once you do that, the rest is about pushing your energy beyond its limits, but it's all about control." "Does it have a limit?" Bardock asked, his curiosity piqued. Krillin opened his eyes slightly. "It depends on how strong your body is. King Kai told me not to push it past X2, but in my fight with Zarbon, I managed to use X3. I might be able to handle X4 now, if I pushed myself." Tien stood up, taking a deep breath. "All right, I'm ready to give it a try." He clenched his fists, focusing all his energy inward. A white aura surrounded him, his power slowly rising. The room seemed to vibrate as Tien's energy continued to grow. Soon, hints of red appeared in the white aura as Tien pushed himself further. Moments later, his aura flared red, but just as quickly, it vanished, and Tien collapsed to his hands and knees, panting heavily. "That was intense," Tien gasped, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. "Once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to use Kaioken quickly to boost your strength, speed, and even your senses, hearing, sight, all of it," Krillin explained, his voice calm but filled with encouragement. "I'm ready to try it," Bardock said, determination burning in his eyes. Tien raised an eyebrow, concerned. "Are you sure? I've been training my entire life, and my body feels like it's on fire right now. This technique isn't easy on anyone." Bardock met Tien's gaze and nodded firmly. "I'm ready. I need to get stronger. If we run into something bad out there, I can't be the weak link." With that, Bardock stood, clenching his fists at his sides. The familiar white aura surrounded his body as he began raising his power level. It wasn't long before the white aura started to flicker, tints of red blending into it. A few seconds later, his aura was fully crimson. Bardock focused, holding the surge of power for several moments. He could feel his body straining under the pressure, but pushed through it. Finally, he allowed the energy to recede, and the red glow faded. He took a deep breath, sweat trickling down his face, but a proud smile crossed his lips. "Not bad at all," Krillin said with a grin. "You both have the hang of it. Now it's just a matter of practice. But remember," he added, his tone turning serious, "don't overdo it. Push too far, and your body might shut down. We don't have any sensu beans with us, so take it easy." Kakarot stood near the growing sensu beans, holding up 2 of the freshly ripened ones from the batch Bulma had been cultivating. He tossed one to Raditz, who caught it with ease, and popped the other into his own mouth. "That's better," Kakarot said, with satisfaction as the bean worked its magic, instantly healing his body and restoring his energy. "I feel much stronger now." Raditz stretched his arms, the effects of the sensu bean already kicking in. "Is the ship ready yet?" "It should be ready in a few hours," Kakarot replied. "But before we go, I need to check on something." Raditz raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "I'm heading up to see if Korin has more sensu beans. We'll need as many as we can get for the trip to Namek and whatever's waiting for us there." "I figured you would," came a voice from behind them. Kakarot and Raditz turned to see Korin, the white-furred martial arts master, walking toward them with a small bag slung over his shoulder. "I've got a whole bag of beans for you to take on your trip." "Thanks, Korin," Kakarot said, grinning widely. "With these and the ones Bulma's grown, we should have enough to keep ourselves going and train hard on the way to Namek." A short while later, the 2 Saiyans found themselves in Dr. Brief's lab, where the ship they would take to Namek was being prepped. "Is the ship almost ready?" Kakarot asked, looking over at his father-in-law, Dr. Briefs, who was adjusting some final controls. "Almost done," Dr. Briefs replied with a grin. "I just need to finish installing the cappuccino machine." Raditz groaned, rolling his eyes. "We can do without that, Doc. Is the new gravity room good to go?" "Of course," Dr. Briefs said proudly. "It can handle up to 100 times Earth's gravity. You boys are in for quite a workout." "Good," Raditz said, eager to get moving. "Let's not waste any more time." The small group of warriors stretched as they finally stepped out of the ship onto the strange green landscape of Namek. Bardock, Krillin, Tien, and Bulma took in the wide open fields and eerie quiet that filled the air. "Well, we're here," Bulma said, pulling out the dragon radar. "Now all we need to do is find the Dragon Balls." Bardock's scouter beeped loudly, and his expression quickly turned serious. "I'm picking up several large power levels moving in the distance," he said, adjusting the scouter on his face, "and they're strong. The highest one is reading at 120,000. 120,000? Tien's eyes widened. "That's way beyond anything we've faced before. How are we supposed to handle that?" Krillin furrowed his brow, thinking quickly. "We're not going to fight them. If they've got power levels like that, we need to play this smart. We'll find one of the Dragon Balls and hide it from them so they can't make their wish." "Sounds like a plan," Bardock agreed, nodding. He knew they couldn't take on power levels like that head on. They needed strategy more than brute force. Bulma glanced down at the radar. "There's one Dragon Ball not too far in the opposite direction. We can probably grab it before they even realize we're here." "Good," Tien said, his voice steady but with a hint of tension. "Let's move quickly. The sooner we find that Dragon Ball, the better." And that's it for today's episode, guys. If you watched to the end, then that could be an indication that you enjoy the series. So please leave a like on the video. Thank you and take care.